Tonight, a man will discover that the woman he has despised for 7 years is actually the only one protecting him from total destruction. Marcus Vail, the arrogant CEO who betrayed his wife in the middle of a high society party, is about to face the harshest truth. The woman he brought to the door like a mere ornament actually possesses a secret empire that could crush him with a single phone call. Follow this story to the end, like and comment on the city you're watching to let me know how far my story has progressed. Marcus Vail straightened his bow tie in the limousine's tinted window and felt the familiar rush of power settle into his chest like expensive whiskey. Tonight was the Blackthorn Summit Gala, the kind of event where presidents rubbed elbows with oil magnates and tech billionaires pretended they gave a damn about charity. Getting an invitation meant you mattered. Getting photographed meant you existed. And Marcus Vail intended to exist very loudly tonight. "You look amazing," he murmured, though he wasn't looking at the woman beside him. He was checking his own reflection. The sharp cut of his Tom Ford tuxedo, the Patek Philippe catching light on his wrist, the calculated stubble that cost $200 to maintain. Everything about Marcus Vail was expensive, and he made damn sure everyone knew it. The woman next to him, Bianca something, 23 years old with legs that went on forever, and a modeling contract that would evaporate the moment she turned 26, giggled and squeezed his arm. She smelled like vanilla and ambition. Marcus liked that. It was honest. She wanted to be seen with him, and he wanted to be seen with someone who looked like her. Transaction complete. No complications. Not like Serafina. The thought of his wife flickered through Marcus's mind for exactly 3 seconds before he shoved it aside. Serafina would be fine. She was always fine. Beautiful in that quiet, boring way. The kind of woman who looked elegant in photographs but never said anything interesting at dinner parties. She'd probably spend the evening reading one of those pretentious books she kept on the nightstand, the ones with French titles Marcus couldn't pronounce and didn't care to learn. 7 years of marriage, and Marcus still couldn't figure out why he'd proposed. Probably because she looked good next to him. Probably because his mother approved. Probably because at the time, Marcus thought that having a beautiful, quiet wife was what successful men were supposed to have. He was wrong about a lot of things back then. The limousine pulled up to the Blackthorn Tower, 60 stories of steel and glass that cut into the Manhattan skyline like a middle finger to everyone who couldn't afford to enter. Camera flashes exploded against the tinted windows. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. This was the moment he lived for. The validation. The proof that he mattered. "Ready?" he asked Bianca, who was already checking her makeup in a compact mirror. "I was born ready," she said, and Marcus almost laughed because she probably believed that. The driver opened the door. Marcus stepped out first, and the cameras went insane. He smiled, not too wide, nothing desperate, and reached back to help Bianca out of the car. Her hand was small and cold in his. She posed next to him like she'd done this 1,000 times, which she probably had, just with different men in different cities. "Mr. Vail, over here!" "Marcus, is this your date for the evening?" "Mr. Vail, can you comment on the rumors about Vail Dominion's fourth quarter projections?" Marcus ignored the questions and kept walking. Let them speculate. Let them wonder. Mystery was power, and Marcus had spent years learning how to wield it. The entrance to the ballroom was all marble and gold leaf, the kind of obscene wealth that old money pretended to be embarrassed about, but secretly loved. A string quartet played something classical that Marcus didn't recognize. Waiters in white gloves carried champagne that cost more per bottle than most people made in a month. Marcus grabbed 2 glasses and handed one to Bianca. She sipped delicately, probably worried about smudging her lipstick. Marcus drank deeply. He'd earned this. Clawed his way up from a middle-class neighborhood in Queens to a penthouse in Tribeca. Vail Dominion Holdings was his creation, built from nothing but ambition and a willingness to step on anyone who got in his way. "Oh my God," Bianca whispered, gripping his arm. "Is that Senator Michaels?" Marcus followed her gaze. Sure enough, the senior senator from New York was holding court near the ice sculpture, surrounded by sycophants and donors. Marcus had contributed $50,000 to his last campaign. Time to collect. "Come on," Marcus said, already steering Bianca through the crowd. "Let me introduce you to some people who actually matter." The next hour was a blur of handshakes and small talk, the kind of performance Marcus had perfected over the years. He laughed at jokes that weren't funny. He complimented wives who looked like they'd had the same plastic surgeon. He name-dropped shamelessly and watched people's eyes light up with recognition and envy. This was the game, and Marcus was winning. But then, at exactly 9:47 p.m., something changed. The ballroom went quiet. Not gradually. Not the way conversations naturally ebb and flow at parties. This was sudden. Absolute. Like someone had hit a mute button on 300 people simultaneously. Marcus looked up from his conversation with a hedge fund manager whose name he'd already forgotten, and that's when he saw her. A woman in a midnight black gown stood at the top of the marble staircase. The dress was simple. No sequins, no desperate bid for attention, but somehow it commanded the entire room. Her dark hair was pulled back severely, exposing a face that could have been carved from ice. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't trying to be noticed. She simply existed, and the entire ballroom bent toward her like gravity had shifted. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach, because he recognized her. The woman standing at the top of those stairs, looking down at 300 of the most powerful people in the world like they were subjects awaiting orders, was his wife. "Holy shit," Bianca breathed next to him. "Who is that?" Marcus couldn't answer. His throat had closed. His brain was trying to process what his eyes were seeing, but the pieces wouldn't fit. That couldn't be Serafina. Serafina was quiet, forgettable, the kind of woman who blended into wallpaper at events like this. But the woman on the staircase wasn't blending into anything. She descended slowly, each step measured and deliberate. She didn't look at the crowd, didn't acknowledge the stairs. She simply walked, and the room parted for her like the Red Sea. Marcus watched, paralyzed, as senators straightened their spines. Billionaires lowered their champagne glasses. Men who owned small countries suddenly looked nervous. And then Arthur Blackthorne himself, the elusive billionaire who hosted this gala, the man who'd made presidents wait for appointments, stepped forward from the shadows near the terrace doors. He crossed the ballroom floor in 6 long strides, and he kissed the back of Serafina's hand in front of everyone. "Oh my God," Bianca said again, her voice higher now, tinged with panic. "Marcus, who is that woman? Why is everyone—" "That's my wife," Marcus heard himself say, and the words felt like glass in his mouth. Bianca's grip on his arm went slack. "What?" Marcus couldn't look at her, couldn't look away from Serafina. Around them, he could hear whispers starting, a low hiss of sound that spread through the ballroom like wildfire. DeLuca's daughter. Disappeared years ago, yeah. Thought she was dead. Married. To who? Vale? Marcus Vale? The name hit him like a slap. They were talking about him. About her. About something Marcus didn't understand but was clearly supposed to. He watched as Serafina exchanged quiet words with Arthur Blackthorne. The old billionaire was smiling, stolz. Actually smiling, like she'd just handed him the greatest gift of his life. Other people began approaching, carefully, respectfully, like they were afraid of being dismissed. An older woman with diamonds dripping from her throat touched Serafina's arm gently, said something in what sounded like Italian. Serafina responded in the same language, her voice low and smooth, and the older woman actually laughed, a real laugh, not the fake social kind Marcus heard all night. "I don't understand," Bianca said, and Marcus realized she was still standing next to him, still clutching her champagne glass like a lifeline. "Your wife is—" "Go home," Marcus said flatly. "What?" "Get in the car. Go home. I'll call you tomorrow." "But we just— now." Bianca's face went red, then white. For a moment, Marcus thought she might throw her drink at him, but she just turned on her expensive heels and walked toward the exit, her shoulders stiff with humiliation. Marcus barely noticed. His entire world had narrowed to the woman in the black dress who was supposed to be his wife, but was clearly someone else entirely. He started walking before he realized he'd made the decision. His legs carried him across the ballroom floor, weaving through clusters of people who were still whispering, still staring. He didn't care. Nothing mattered except getting to her, getting answers, getting control back over a situation that had somehow slipped completely through his fingers. Serafina saw him coming, her eyes, cold and dark, and completely unfamiliar, tracked his approach. She didn't smile, didn't frown. Her face was a mask of polite neutrality that made Marcus want to scream. "Serafina!" he said when he finally reached her, and his voice came out rougher than he intended. What the hell is going on? Marcus. She said his name like it was a greeting reserved for distant acquaintances. I wasn't expecting to see you here. You weren't. Marcus felt his anger spike. This is the Blackthorn Gala. Of course I'm here. I was invited. So was I. By who? Serafina tilted her head slightly, and Marcus caught a flash of something in her eyes. Amusement, maybe, or pity. By Arthur. We're old friends. Arthur Blackthorn. She called him Arthur, like they were equals. You never mentioned knowing him, Marcus said, and he hated how defensive he sounded. You never asked. The words were simple, factual, and they hit Marcus like a punch to the gut because they were true. In 7 years of marriage, Marcus had never once asked Serafina about her life before him, her family, her friends, her past. He'd just assumed she was nobody special, nobody important. People are staring, Marcus said, because he didn't know what else to say. Let them. Serafina, what is happening? Why is everyone acting like they know me? She finished his sentence, and there was something sharp in her voice now. Because they do, Marcus. They've always known me. You're the only one who didn't. Before Marcus could respond, a man approached. Older, maybe 70, with silver hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. He wore an impeccably tailored suit that probably cost more than Marcus's car, and when he looked at Marcus, his eyes were flat and assessing. Serafina, the man said, his accent thick and European. Italian, Marcus thought. It has been too long. Luciano. Serafina's voice softened slightly. I didn't know you'd be here. I heard you resurfaced. I had to see for myself. Luciano's gaze slid to Marcus, lingered there for a long, uncomfortable moment. And this is your husband? Yes, Marcus Vale. Marcus, this is Luciano Bellori. He was a friend of my father's. Friend. The word felt wrong somehow, like calling a shark an aquarium decoration. Pleasure, Marcus said automatically, extending his hand. Luciano looked at Marcus's hand like it might be contagious, then shook it briefly. His grip was cold and firm. Val Dominion Holdings, I'm familiar with your company. Good to hear, Marcus said, trying to inject some confidence back into his voice. We've had a strong year. Have you? Luciano's smile didn't reach his eyes. How fortunate. The conversation died there. Luciano turned back to Serafina, said something in rapid Italian that Marcus couldn't follow. Serafina responded in the same language, and Marcus just stood there feeling like a child who'd wandered into an adult conversation. This was wrong. All of it. Marcus was supposed to be the center of attention at events like this. People were supposed to approach him, eager for his time, his approval, but right now, standing next to Serafina, he felt invisible. Worse than invisible. Irrelevant. More people approached. A French diplomat. A German industrialist. A woman who apparently ran half the art galleries in Europe. They all greeted Serafina warmly, familiarly, like she was royalty they'd been waiting years to see again. And Marcus just stood there, sweating in his expensive tuxedo, trying to smile while his entire understanding of reality crumbled around him. Finally, Serafina excused herself from the conversation and turned to Marcus. We need to talk, somewhere private. It wasn't a suggestion. Marcus followed her through the ballroom, acutely aware of every eye tracking their movement. She led him out onto a terrace that overlooked Manhattan, the city lights spreading out below them like scattered diamonds. The air was cool, almost cold, and Marcus realized he was shaking. Serafina stood at the railing, her back to him, the black dress catching the wind. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Who are you? Marcus finally asked, and his voice cracked on the question. You know who I am. No, I don't. I thought I did, but my name is Serafina De Luca, she said, still not turning around. Daughter of Vittorio De Luca. Does that name mean anything to you? It didn't. Marcus searched his memory and came up empty. Should it? Now she turned. Her face was unreadable in the shadows. My father controlled one of the largest financial networks in Europe. He had connections to governments, corporations, criminal organizations. People called him the architect because he could build empires or destroy them with a single phone call. Marcus felt his stomach drop. You're saying your father was a power broker, a kingmaker, A man who operated in shadows and never left fingerprints. Serafina's voice was clinical, detached. He died 5 years ago. Cancer. Why didn't you tell me? Because I left that world, Marcus. I walked away from it when I came to America. I wanted a normal life, a quiet life. I wanted to be nobody special. So you lied to me. No. Serafina's eyes flashed. I never lied. I just didn't tell you things you never bothered to ask about. In 7 years of marriage, Marcus, you never once asked about my family, my past, who I was before I met you. You were too busy looking at yourself in every reflective surface to notice the person standing next to you. The truth of it hit Marcus like a physical blow. She was right. He'd never asked, never cared. Serafina had been wallpaper in his life. Decorative, pleasant, utterly forgettable. Why now? Marcus managed. Why reveal yourself tonight? Because 3 weeks ago, someone tried to destroy your company. Marcus blinked. What are you talking about? Veil Dominion. There was a hostile takeover attempt orchestrated through a shell corporation in Zurich. They were going to strip your assets, fire your employees, and leave you with nothing but debt. You would have been bankrupt by Christmas. That's impossible. I would have known. You didn't know because I stopped it. Serafina's voice was flat, matter of fact. I made some calls, called in favors I swore I'd never use. The takeover disappeared. Your company is safe. For now. Marcus couldn't breathe. The terrace was spinning. You're lying. Check with your board tomorrow. Ask them about the Zurich incident. See what they tell you. Serafina moved away from the railing, closer to him. I spent 7 years trying to be the person you wanted me to be. Quiet, invisible, convenient. But when your enemies came for you, I had to make a choice. Let them destroy you or step back into the world I swore I'd left behind. Why would you protect me? The question came out raw, desperate. If I'm such a terrible husband, because despite everything, Marcus, you're still my husband. Serafina's expression softened slightly, and for the first time tonight, Marcus saw a glimpse of the woman he thought he knew. And because somewhere under all the ego and the performance, I still believe there might be a good man. I'm just not sure you believe it yourself. Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to defend himself. But the words died in his throat because she was right about all of it. The ego, the performance, the carefully constructed image he showed the world while hiding the hollow, desperate thing underneath. What happens now? He asked. Now? Serafina looked back toward the ballroom, where the party continued without them. Now you decide who you want to be. The man I married who only cares about appearances? Or someone who might actually deserve the life he's been given? She started walking back inside, then paused at the doorway. And Marcus? Your company is currently held in a trust under my name. Legally, I own Veil Dominion. All of it. The board knows, your lawyers know. You're the only one who didn't. Marcus opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I did it to protect you, Serafina continued. But I'm not giving it back until I know you won't destroy everything I worked to save. So here's my advice. Go home. Sleep on it. And tomorrow, we'll talk about what comes next. Then she was gone, slipping back into the ballroom, back into that world of power and shadows that Marcus had never even known existed. He stood alone on this terrace, the Manhattan skyline blurring in front of him, his perfect life cracking apart like cheap glass. And for the first time in years, Marcus Veil had absolutely no idea what to do next. Inside the ballroom, Serafina moved through the crowd with practiced ease, accepting congratulations and carefully worded questions about her return. She smiled, nodded, gave nothing away. But her hands were shaking. She'd spent 7 years building a wall between herself and this world, 7 years pretending she was someone smaller, someone safer. And tonight she'd torn that wall down in front of 300 witnesses. There was no going back now. Serafina. She turned to find Arthur Blackthorne standing behind her, his expression unreadable. They'd known each other since she was 16, back when her father was still alive, still building his empire, still teaching her how to navigate the dangerous waters of power. Was that necessary? Arthur asked quietly, humiliating him in front of everyone. I didn't humiliate him. I told him the truth. The truth can be a weapon. So can 7 years of being invisible. Serafina accepted another glass of champagne from a passing waiter, though she had no intention of drinking it. He brought another woman to this gala, Arthur. He left me at home like I was something to be embarrassed about. So yes, tonight was necessary. Arthur studied her for a long moment. Your father would have been proud. My father would have had Marcus killed for the disrespect. True. Arthur's smile was thin. But you're not your father. No, Serafina agreed. I'm not. But as she looked around the ballroom, at the faces watching her with a mixture of fear and respect, she wondered if that was still true. Every favor she'd called in to save Marcus's company had pulled her deeper into the world she'd sworn off. Every phone call had reminded the old network that Vittorio De Luca's daughter was still alive, still capable, still dangerous. Be careful, Arthur said, as if reading her thoughts. The moment people know you can be reached, they'll come calling, and not all of them will be friendly. Let them come. But as she said it, Serafina felt a chill run down her spine, because she knew Arthur was right. The moment she'd revealed herself tonight, she'd painted a target on her back, and possibly on Marcus's as well. Across the ballroom, she could see him returning from the terrace, his face pale and stunned. He looked lost, broken, like someone had reached inside him and ripped out everything he thought was true. Part of Serafina felt sorry for him, but another part, the part that remembered every dismissive comment, every time he'd introduced her as just his wife, every evening he'd left her alone while he chased his ego around Manhattan, that part felt satisfied. Let him feel small for once. Let him understand what it was like to be nothing in someone else's story. The night continued, people danced, deals were made in corners, the champagne flowed. And through it all, Serafina played her part perfectly. The prodigal daughter returned, the hidden power revealed, but inside she was screaming because she knew what came next. The old world didn't let people walk away twice, and she'd just announced to everyone that she was back. It bolts deaths. Marcus made it to his car before the panic hit. He sat in the back of the limousine alone, his hands gripping his knees so hard his knuckles went white. The driver asked if he wanted to go home, and Marcus just nodded because he couldn't trust his voice. The city passed by outside the tinted windows. Manhattan at night, glittering and cold and indifferent. Marcus had spent years trying to conquer this city, trying to make it acknowledge him. But tonight he realized he'd been playing the wrong game entirely. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and called his lawyer. Marcus? David Chen sounded groggy. It was almost midnight. What's wrong? Did you know? Marcus's voice came out hoarse. Did you know about the trust? Silence on the other end. Then carefully, we were advised not to tell you. By who? By Mrs. Vale's legal team. They made it very clear that information was confidential until Marcus hung up, called his CFO. Same story, called the chairman of his board. Same goddamn story. Everyone knew. Everyone except him. His company, the thing he'd built from nothing, the thing he'd sacrificed everything for, wasn't even his anymore. Serafina owned it, had owned it for weeks apparently, while Marcus walked around Manhattan like he was still king of his own castle. He thought about the takeover attempt she'd mentioned, the Zurich Corporation. He'd have to verify it tomorrow, but deep in his gut, Marcus knew it was true. Knew that his wife had been protecting him while he'd been publicly humiliating her. The limousine pulled up to his building in Tribeca. Marcus got out, ignored the doorman's greeting, and took the elevator up to the penthouse. Their penthouse. Though now he wasn't sure whose name was on the deed anymore. The apartment was dark, empty. Serafina's book was still on the nightstand. Some thick French novel Marcus had never bothered to ask about. Her reading glasses were folded neatly on the kitchen counter. Small traces of a life Marcus had never paid attention to. He poured himself 3 fingers of scotch and stood at the window, looking out at the city that suddenly felt foreign. Who was Serafina De Luca? Not the quiet woman he'd married. That much was clear. But who was she really? And what else had she been hiding all these years? Marcus pulled out his laptop and typed her father's name into the search engine. Vittorio De Luca. The results were sparse but chilling. Articles from European newspapers, mentions in financial journals, references to investigations that never went anywhere. No photos, no interviews. Just shadows and whispers and the unmistakable scent of power operating outside the law. and Serafina was his daughter. Marcus thought about Luciano Bellori, the way he'd looked at Marcus like he was evaluating a piece of meat. He thought about Arthur Blackthorne kissing Serafina's hand like she was royalty. He thought about the way the entire ballroom had bent toward her the moment she appeared. These people knew her, respected her, feared her maybe. And Marcus had treated her like furniture. He drank the scotch, poured another. At some point, he moved to the couch and just sat there in the dark, letting the full weight of his own stupidity crush down on him. Around 3 a.m, he heard the door open. Footsteps in the hallway. Serafina appeared in the living room doorway, still wearing the black dress, her face tired. "You're still awake," she said quietly. "Couldn't sleep." She nodded, like she had expected that. She moved to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water, leaned against the counter. They stayed like that for a long moment, separated by 20 feet and 7 years of lies. "I looked him up," Marcus finally said. "Your father." "And? And I don't understand why you'd leave that world for this." "For me." Serafina was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was raw. "Because that world killed everything it touched, Marcus. My father was powerful, but he died alone in a hospital room with no one but me beside him. He had money, influence, fear, but he didn't have love. He didn't have peace, and I swore I wouldn't end up like him. So you chose me? A guy from Queens with big dreams and no substance? I chose normal. I chose quiet." She looked at him directly, and Marcus felt the full weight of her gaze. "I chose wrong." The words landed like stones. "What happens tomorrow?" Marcus asked. "Tomorrow, you meet with your board. They'll explain the trust structure. You'll sign documents acknowledging the transfer, and then we figure out if this marriage can survive what we've become. And if it can't?" Serafina's smile was sad and small. "Then at least you'll walk away with your company intact. That's more than you would have had if I'd stayed invisible." She set down her water glass and walked toward the bedroom, then stopped. "For what it's worth, Marcus, I never wanted this. I never wanted to drag you into my world. I just wanted to protect you from the people in it. Maybe I didn't deserve protecting? Maybe not." She looked back at him, and in the dim light from the kitchen, Marcus thought he saw tears in her eyes. "But I did it anyway, because somewhere under all your arrogance, I thought I saw someone worth saving." Then she was gone, disappearing into the bedroom and closing the door softly behind her. Marcus sat alone in the dark, the empty Scotch glass sweating in his hand, and wondered if he'd just lost the only thing that had ever actually mattered. Marcus didn't sleep. He stayed on the couch until the sky turned gray, until the city below started waking up with its usual noise. Garbage trucks grinding through narrow streets, early commuters honking at nothing, the distant wail of sirens that never seemed to stop in Manhattan. His Scotch glass sat empty on the coffee table, leaving a ring of condensation on the expensive wood that Serafina would normally wipe away without comment. But Serafina wasn't coming out of the bedroom. Around 7, Marcus heard the shower running. He stood up, his back screaming from sleeping wrong, and walked to the kitchen to make coffee. His hand shook as he measured out the grounds. He'd made coffee 1,000 times in this kitchen, but this morning every movement felt foreign, like he was operating someone else's body. The bedroom door opened. Serafina emerged wearing tailored black pants and a cream silk blouse, her hair pulled back in a way that made her look severe, professional, like she was going to war disguised as a business meeting. "Coffee?" Marcus offered, his voice rough from not speaking all night. "I'll get something on the way." She was checking her phone, scrolling through what looked like a long list of messages. "Your board meeting is at 10. David Chen will walk you through the documents." "You're not coming?" "No." She didn't look up. "This is something you need to do alone." Marcus felt something twist in his chest. "Serafina, don't." She finally looked at him, and her eyes were cold, empty. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Sign the papers, accept reality, and we'll talk tonight." "About what?" "About whether this marriage has a future." She grabbed her bag from the counter, Stutteam. Expensive leather, something Marcus had bought her 2 Christmases ago without asking what she actually wanted, and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" Marcus asked, hating how desperate he sounded. "To deal with the mess I created by saving your company." Serafina paused at the door, her hand on the knob. People are asking questions, Marcus. Dangerous people. And I need to make sure they understand that you're off limits. What does that mean? But she was already gone, the door clicking shut behind her with a finality that made Marcus's stomach drop. He stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by expensive appliances and imported tile and all the trappings of success that suddenly felt hollow. The coffee maker beeped. Marcus poured a cup he didn't want and tried to figure out how his life had imploded in less than 12 hours. Chai. The Vale Dominion Holdings boardroom occupied the top floor of a midtown building Marcus had purchased 3 years ago specifically because he liked the way it felt to own an entire skyscraper. The walls were glass, offering a panoramic view of Manhattan that usually made Marcus feel invincible. Today it just made him feel exposed. David Chen was already there when Marcus arrived, along with the entire board. 8 people Marcus had handpicked over the years, people he thought were loyal to him. Now, looking at their faces, Marcus realized they'd all known about the trust, about Serafina, about everything, and not one of them had warned him. Marcus. David stood, extending his hand with professional courtesy that felt insulting. Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? David's smile was thin. Please, sit. Marcus sat, looked around the table at faces that wouldn't quite meet his eyes. Janet Morrison, his CFO, was studying her tablet like it held the secrets of the universe. Robert Klein, the chairman of the board, looked uncomfortable in his $1,000 suit. The others just looked away. Let's get this over with, Marcus said flatly. David opened a folder and slid several documents across the table. As you're now aware, 3 weeks ago, Vale Dominion Holdings was targeted for a hostile takeover by Kreuzberg Capital Management, a shell corporation operating out of Zurich. I wasn't aware of anything 3 weeks ago, Marcus interrupted, because nobody told me. We were advised by my wife. I know. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest like bile. What I don't know is why everyone in this room decided to follow her orders instead of mine. Silence. Heavy and damning. Finally, Robert Klein cleared his throat. Marcus, when Mrs. Vale first contacted us, we didn't know who she was. She introduced herself as Serafina De Luca. That name carries significant weight in certain circles. What circles? International finance, private equity, European power structures that operate outside traditional channels. Robert chose his words carefully, like he was walking through a minefield. Her father was Vittorio De Luca. Does that name mean anything to you? She told me last night. Then you understand why we took her concerns seriously. The takeover attempt was real, Marcus. Kreuzberg had assembled a coalition of investors ready to purchase 60% of our outstanding shares. The deal was scheduled to close within 48 hours. We would have been gutted. Marcus felt cold. How did she stop it? David took over. Mrs. Vale made several phone calls. Within 6 hours, every investor in the coalition withdrew. Kreuzberg Capital dissolved. The entire operation disappeared like it never existed. That's impossible. That's power, Robert corrected. The kind of power that operates beyond money, beyond law. The kind that makes problems vanish because nobody wants to face the consequences of ignoring it. Marcus looked down at the documents in front of him. Legal language he couldn't parse without effort. His company, his life's work, reduced to clauses and signatures. What exactly am I signing? He asked. An acknowledgement that Vale Dominion Holdings is currently held in a trust controlled by Serafina De Luca Vale. You remain CEO with full operational authority, but all major decisions require her approval. All financial transfers over $1 million require her signature. And if you attempt to sell, dissolve, or significantly alter the company structure, the trust becomes permanent and irrevocable. So she owns me. She owns the company, David clarified. And she's made it clear that this arrangement is temporary, contingent on certain conditions being met. What conditions? Stability, transparency, and evidence that you're capable of running this company without letting your ego destroy it. The words hit like a slap. Marcus looked at David, his lawyer, someone he'd paid hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years, and saw no sympathy there, just professional detachment. Did she tell you to say that? Marcus asked quietly. She didn't have to. Marcus, I've watched you for 5 years. You're brilliant at making money, but you're terrible at managing people. You burn through employees, you make enemies casually. You take stupid risks because you like the attention. David leaned forward. Serafina didn't just save your company, she saved you from yourself. Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to defend himself. But looking around the table, he saw agreement on every face. These people, his people, all thought the same thing. He was the problem. Where do I sign? Marcus asked, his voice hollow. David pointed to 3 different places across 4 documents. Marcus signed without reading them. What was the point? He'd already lost. When it was done, David gathered the papers and tucked them back into the folder. Mrs. Vale asked me to remind you that this is for your protection. Once the financial markets understand who's backing Vale Dominion, nobody will dare touch it again. How comforting. Marcus, are we done here? Robert Klein stood, straightening his suit. There's one more thing. Mrs. Vale has requested that we schedule monthly board meetings with her in attendance, starting next week. So she's taking over. She's ensuring accountability. Robert's voice was firm. Something this board should have done years ago. If you have a problem with that, Marcus, I suggest you take it up with your wife. The meeting dissolved. People filed out quickly, avoiding eye contact, leaving Marcus alone in the boardroom with David. For what it's worth, David said quietly, I think she's giving you a second chance. Most people in her position would have just taken everything and walked away. Maybe she should have. Maybe. David headed toward the door, then paused. Marcus, I've worked with a lot of powerful people. Politicians, CEOs, old money families, but I've never seen anyone command the kind of respect Serafina does. Whatever her father built, whatever connection she has, people are genuinely afraid of disappointing her. Then why did she marry me? David smiled sadly. That's the question you should have asked 7 years ago. Marcus spent the rest of the day in his office, pretending to work while his brain spun in circles. He tried to focus on quarterly reports, on acquisition targets, on the daily operations that usually consumed his attention, but everything felt pointless now. What was the point of building an empire if someone else owned the deed? Around 3 o'clock, his assistant, Emily, young and efficient and definitely updating her resume after this latest drama, knocked on his door. Mr. Vale? There's someone here to see you. I'm not taking visitors. He said you'd want to see him. His name is Luciano Bellori. The name sent ice through Marcus's veins. The old man from the Gala, the one who'd looked at Marcus like he was something scraped off a shoe. Send him in, Marcus heard himself say. Luciano Bellori entered like he owned the building. He wore another perfectly tailored suit, charcoal gray this time, and he moved with the kind of confidence that came from decades of operating in rooms where one wrong word could end a life. Mr. Vale. Luciano sat without being invited, folding his hands on the desk like this was his office. We need to talk. About the position you've put Serafina in. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. I didn't put her anywhere. She made her own choices. Did she? Luciano's eyes were sharp and cold. Or did your incompetence force her hand? Tell me, Mr. Vale, did you know that by revealing herself last night, Serafina painted a target on both your backs? What are you talking about? Vittorio De Luca spent 40 years building an empire based on fear and respect. When he died, that empire fractured. Different factions wanted control. Some wanted to honor his legacy. Others wanted to profit from his death. And all of them wondered what happened to his daughter. Luciano leaned forward slightly. For 5 years, Serafina was safely invisible. But the moment she stepped into that ballroom, the moment she used her father's connections to save your pathetic company, she announced to the world that she's back. And now everyone is watching, wondering, calculating what her return means for the balance of power. Marcus felt his mouth go dry. You're saying I made her a target. I'm saying she made herself a target to protect you, which means you now have a responsibility to not be the weak link that gets her killed. Killed? This is Manhattan, not some war zone. The war zones are where amateurs operate. Luciano cut him off. Professionals do their work in boardrooms and penthouses and charity galas. You think Kreuzberg Capital was just a business opportunity? That was a message, Mr. Vale. Someone wanted to see how Serafina would respond, and now they know. Marcus felt sick. Who? That's what we're trying to determine, which is why I'm here. Luciano pulled a phone from his pocket and placed it on the desk. This is a secure line. If anything unusual happens, if you notice surveillance, if someone approaches you with questions about Serafina, if you receive threats, you call this number immediately. I'm not some child who needs protecting. You're exactly that. Luciano's voice was flat, final. You're a child playing games in a world you don't understand. But Serafina, for reasons I cannot comprehend, has decided you're worth protecting. So I'm going to help keep you alive, whether you deserve it or not. He stood, smoothing his suit. One more thing. If you hurt her again, if you embarrass her, betray her, or continue treating her like she's less than what she is, you will answer to me. And trust me, Mr. Vale, you don't want that. Luciano walked to the door, then paused. She loved you once. Maybe she still does. But love is not infinite, and patience has limits. I suggest you figure out quickly whether you're capable of being the man she thought she married. Then he was gone, leaving the phone on Marcus's desk like a grenade. Marcus stared at it for a long time, his hands shaking. What the hell had he married into? Serafina spent the day doing things Marcus would never understand. She met with Luciano at a private club in the West Village, where men who controlled continents spoke in whispers over single malt scotch. She made calls to Geneva, to Rome, to offshore accounts that existed only in encrypted ledgers. She reactivated contacts she'd promised herself she'd never use again. And with each phone call, each meeting, each favor called in, she felt herself slipping further back into the person she'd tried to kill when she came to America. You look tired, Arthur Blackthorne said when she arrived at his penthouse around 6. He poured her wine she didn't ask for, and they stood at the window overlooking Central Park. I'm tired. Second thoughts about last night? 1,000 of them. Serafina sipped the wine. It was excellent. Arthur never served anything less. But it's done now, can't go back. You could disappear again. Take Marcus somewhere remote, start over. With what? He'd resent me forever, and the people who are watching now wouldn't just let us walk away. Serafina closed her eyes. My father always said the hardest part about power is that once you touch it, it never washes off. Your father was a lot of things, but he wasn't wrong about that. They stood in silence for a moment. Outside, the park was turning gold in the evening light. People walked dogs. Joggers ran past. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware of the forces moving beneath the surface of their city. Luciano thinks someone's testing me, Serafina said quietly. The Kreutzberg takeover. It was too precise, too targeted. I heard. Any theories? 3 possibilities. The Kessler Group in Frankfurt, the Bratva network that's been expanding into financial manipulation, or someone from your father's old organization. Serafina nodded. Someone who wants to see if I'm weak, if marriage to an American turned me soft. Did it? She thought about Marcus, about the way he'd looked at her on the terrace last night, confused and broken and small. Part of her had enjoyed that, the revenge of 7 years spent being invisible. But another part felt guilty. I don't know anymore, she admitted. I married him because I wanted normal. I wanted to be someone who worried about dinner reservations and anniversary gifts, not offshore accounts and political leverage. But normal doesn't exist for people like me, does it? Arthur turned to look at her directly. Serafina, you need to decide something right now. Are you protecting Marcus because you love him, or because you're afraid of what it means if you don't? The question hit harder than she expected. I don't know if I love him, she said slowly. I loved who I thought he could be. But the man I've been married to for 7 years, that man doesn't see me, doesn't respect me, brought another woman to the most important gala in Manhattan while I sat at home reading. Then why save him? Because letting him fall felt like admitting I wasted 7 years of my life on nothing. Serafina finished her wine. And because somewhere under all the ego and performance, I still see glimpses of something better, something real. That's called hope. Dangerous thing in our world. I know. Arthur walked to his desk and pulled out a thin folder. This came through back channels today. Information on Marcus's business history, deals he's made, enemies he's created. Serafina, your husband has been careless, aggressive. He's made promises he couldn't keep and burned bridges he'll need someday. Serafina took the folder, her stomach sinking as she flipped through it. Contract violations. Breached partnerships. Suppliers left unpaid while Marcus bought his third sports car. A pattern of behavior that painted a clear picture. Marcus Vale cared about Marcus Vale, and everyone else was expendable. "This is who you're protecting," Arthur said quietly. "A man who treats people like assets. Are you sure he's worth it?" Serafina closed the folder. "He's my husband." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now." She left Arthur's penthouse as darkness fell over Manhattan. Her driver, a former Israeli Special Forces operative named David, who'd worked for her father and now worked for her, was waiting at the curb. "Home, Mrs. Vale?" "Not yet." Serafina settled into the back seat. "I need to make a stop first." Marcus was still in his office when his phone rang. Private number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Hello?" "Mr. Vale." A woman's voice, European accent, cold. "We need to meet." "Who is this?" "Someone who knows what your wife has been hiding. Someone who can help you understand the danger you're in." Marcus felt his pulse spike. "I'm not interested in midnight. The corner of Houston and Lafayette. Come alone, or don't come at all." The line went dead. Marcus sat there holding the phone, his brain screaming at him not to go, not to be stupid, to call Serafina or Luciano or someone who knew how to handle this. But another part of him, the part that hated being kept in the dark, that resented being protected like a child, wanted answers, wanted to understand the world his wife had been hiding from him. At 11:45, Marcus left his office and took a cab downtown. The streets were mostly empty, just a few drunk kids stumbling between bars and homeless people sleeping in doorways. He got out at Houston and Lafayette and waited. A black sedan pulled up exactly at midnight. The back door opened. "Get in," said the same woman's voice. Every instinct screamed danger, but Marcus got in anyway. The woman sitting across from him was maybe 40, with sharp features and eyes like frozen nitrogen. She wore an expensive coat and held herself like someone who'd killed people before and wouldn't hesitate to do it again. "Mr. Vale, thank you for coming." "Who are you?" "Someone who knew your wife's father, someone who watched him build an empire through blood and fear, and someone who's very curious about why his daughter decided to surface after 5 years of hiding." Marcus felt sweat on his neck. "I don't know what you want. Information? Cooperation? Insurance?" The woman leaned forward. "Your wife is playing a dangerous game. She's calling in old favors, reactivating networks that should have stayed dormant. She's making people nervous. Then take it up with her." "We will. But first we need to understand whether you're an asset or a liability, whether you can be trusted to keep your mouth shut when things get complicated." "I'm not telling you anything about Serafina." The woman smiled, and it was the coldest thing Marcus had ever seen. "You don't have to. We already know everything we need. We know she saved your company. We know she's protecting you. We know she's trying to keep you out of the darkness while simultaneously stepping back into it herself." She pulled out a tablet and showed Marcus a series of photos. Serafina meeting with Luciano. Serafina at Arthur Blackthorne's penthouse. Serafina getting into cars that drove to locations Marcus didn't recognize. "She's being watched," the woman said. "By us. By her father's old enemies. By people who want to know if Vittorio De Luca's daughter is a threat that needs to be eliminated." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. "If you touch her." "We don't want to touch her. We want to understand her, and you're going to help us do that." "Go to hell." The woman's smile disappeared. "Mr. Vale, you seem to misunderstand the situation. This isn't a negotiation. You're going to tell us what Serafina is planning, what moves she's making, what vulnerabilities she has. And in return, we'll make sure you survive what's coming. And if I refuse, then you become irrelevant. And irrelevant people have a way of disappearing in this city." Marcus's hands clenched into fists. He thought about the phone Luciano had given him, sitting in his pocket. One call and this would be over. Protection would arrive. These people would vanish. But then what? He'd be proving everyone right, proving he was weak, proving he needed saving. "I need time to think," Marcus said. "You have 24 hours. After that, we move forward with or without your cooperation." The woman signaled to the driver. "Same place tomorrow night. Don't be late." The car stopped. Marcus got out onto a street corner he didn't recognize. By the time he turned around, the sedan was gone. He stood there in the cold Manhattan night, shaking, realizing he'd just made the stupidest decision of his life. Serafina was waiting when Marcus finally got home around 2 in the morning. She sat in the dark living room, still wearing her business clothes, a glass of wine untouched on the table beside her. "Where were you?" she asked quietly. Marcus froze in the doorway. "Working late." "Don't lie to me, Marcus, not tonight." He could see her face in the dim light from the kitchen. She looked exhausted, older somehow, like revealing herself had cost her something essential. "I needed to clear my head," Marcus said, which was technically true. "By wandering Manhattan at 2 in the morning? By trying to figure out what the hell my life has become." Marcus threw his keys on the counter harder than necessary. "You want honesty? Fine. I spent today being told I'm incompetent, that my entire company exists because you saved it, that I'm a child playing games while you operate in some shadow world I don't understand. I signed papers that made me a puppet in my own business. And I came home to an empty apartment because my wife was out doing things she can't tell me about." Serafina stood slowly. "You think this is easy for me? You think I wanted to step back into the world that killed my father? Then why did you?" "Because you left me no choice," her voice cracked. "Because you were about to lose everything, and despite how badly you've treated me, I couldn't just watch it happen. I didn't ask you to save me. You didn't have to. That's what marriage means, Marcus. You protect the people you love, even when they don't deserve it." The words hung between them like smoke. "Do you?" Marcus asked. "Love me?" Serafina looked at him for a long moment. "I don't know anymore. I love who I thought you were when we met. I love the man who seemed ambitious but kind, who wanted success but not at the cost of his soul. But that man disappeared somewhere along the way, and I don't know if he's coming back." Marcus felt something break inside him. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to grow up." Serafina's voice was tired, final. "I want you to stop performing and start being real. I want you to look at me, actually look at me, and see a person instead of a prop in your life story. And if I can't, then this marriage is over." The silence that followed was absolute. "I met someone tonight," Marcus said, and immediately regretted it. Serafina went very still. "What?" "Someone who knew your father, someone who's watching you. They want information about what you're doing, and they threaten me if I don't cooperate." "Marcus, what did you do?" "I didn't tell them anything, but they gave me 24 hours to decide whether I'm going to help them or not." Serafina's face went white, then red, then white again. When she spoke, her voice was shaking with rage. "You met with enemies I don't even know about? Without telling me? Without calling Luciano? Marcus, do you have any idea how stupid that was? I wanted answers. You wanted to feel important," she was yelling now, actually yelling. "You wanted to pretend you're strong enough to handle this world, when you're not. You're going to get yourself killed, or worse, you're going to get me killed because you can't stand not being the center of attention for 5 goddamn minutes. So teach me," Marcus shot back. "Stop treating me like a child who needs protecting and actually tell me what's happening. Let me help instead of shutting me out. I shut you out because you never cared before. I shut you out because for 7 years you made it crystal clear that my life didn't matter, that I didn't matter. So forgive me, Marcus, if I don't suddenly trust you with information that could destroy everything." They stood there breathing hard, staring at each other across the wreckage of their marriage. "I'm scared," Marcus finally admitted, his voice cracking. "I'm scared of losing the company, losing you, losing control of my own life, and I don't know how to fix any of it." Serafina's expression softened slightly. "Fear is normal, but stupidity is a choice. You should have called Luciano the moment that car pulled up. You should have trusted that I have systems in place to handle threats. Instead, you went alone because your ego couldn't handle being protected by a woman." She was right, about all of it. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "Now you tell me everything, every word they said, every detail you remember. And then we figure out who's testing us and how to make them stop," Marcus told her. Every detail of the meeting, the woman's face, her voice, her threats, the photos of Serafina, the 24-hour ultimatum. When he finished, Serafina was pacing, her mind clearly working through scenarios Marcus couldn't see. "It's the Frankfurt group," she said finally. "The Kessler family. They've been probing for weakness since my father died. This is their way of seeing if I'm vulnerable through you." "What do we do?" Serafina looked at him, and Marcus saw something dangerous flash in her eyes. "We give them what they want. You show up tomorrow night. You tell them I'm planning to consolidate my father's old holdings. Give them dates, locations, names." "But all false information designed to make them reveal themselves." She stopped pacing. "But, Marcus, you need to do exactly what I tell you. No improvising, no trying to be clever. One mistake and they'll know you're bait." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "You're using me as bait?" "I'm using us as bait. Because right now we're a team whether you like it or not." Serafina moved closer. "And if you can't handle that, if you can't trust me to keep you safe while you play your part, then you need to tell me now so I can send you somewhere far away until this is over." Marcus thought about running, about taking the easy way out, about letting Serafina handle everything while he hid like the child everyone thought he was. But something in him, something stubborn and possibly stupid, refused. "Tell me what to say," Marcus said. "I'll do it." Serafina studied his face for a long moment, looking for cracks, for signs he'd break under pressure. Whatever she saw must have been enough because she nodded. "All right, sit down. We have 12 hours to turn you into someone they'll believe." They spent the rest of the night at the kitchen table, Serafina drilling Marcus on names and dates and fictional operations. She taught him how to lie convincingly, how to read body language, how to survive in a world where one wrong word could mean death. And somewhere around dawn, as the city started waking up outside their window, Marcus realized he was seeing his wife clearly for the first time, not as decoration, not as background, but as someone extraordinary who'd been hiding in plain sight for 7 years, waiting for him to notice. The thought terrified him, because now that he finally saw her, Marcus understood exactly what he stood to lose. 24 hours later, Marcus stood on the same corner, waiting for the black sedan to appear. His heart hammered against his ribs. Sweat soaked through his shirt despite the cold. In his ear, invisible and tiny, was a communications device Luciano had provided. Serafina's voice came through, steady and calm. "Remember, confident but nervous. Like you're betraying me reluctantly. Give them the information slowly. Make them work for it." "I remember," Marcus whispered. "And Marcus, no matter what they say, no matter how they threaten you, stick to the script. Can you do that?" Marcus thought about the alternative, about failing, about proving everyone right that he was weak and useless and didn't deserve the life he'd been given. "Yeah," he said. "I can do that." The black sedan pulled up. The door opened. Marcus got in. And for the first time in his privileged, ego-driven life, Marcus Vale was about to do something genuinely brave. The woman was waiting, same cold smile, same dead eyes. "Mr. Vale, I'm pleased you decided to cooperate." "I don't have much choice," Marcus said, letting his voice shake slightly. "You were right. I'm in over my head." "Smart man. Now tell me, what exactly is your wife planning?" Marcus took a breath and began to lie like his life depended on it. Because it did. Marcus fed them the lies exactly as Serafina had scripted them. He told them about a meeting in Geneva scheduled for next Tuesday. He mentioned offshore accounts being consolidated through a bank in Singapore. He dropped names of people Serafina had supposedly contacted, names she'd given him specifically because they were already dead or disappeared, ghosts that would lead these people nowhere. The woman across from him listened without expression, occasionally making notes on her tablet. Marcus watched her eyes, looking for signs she believed him, signs she saw through the performance, but her face gave nothing away. "These accounts," she said after Marcus finished describing the fictional Singapore operation. "How much are we talking about?" Marcus hesitated, exactly as Serafina had told him to. Let them see the reluctance. Let them think they're breaking him down piece by piece. "I don't know exact numbers," he said, "but Serafina mentioned something about 200 million in liquid assets. Maybe more." The woman's eyebrow raised slightly, the first reaction Marcus had gotten from her. 200 million, and she's moving all of it at once? "That's what I heard her tell Luciano. She's trying to consolidate everything before—" Marcus stopped, like he'd said too much. "Before what?" before people like you figure out what she's doing." The woman smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Vale, you're doing very well. Much better than I expected. One more thing. Where does she keep her files? The documentation of her father's network. The names, the connections, the leverage he accumulated over 40 years." Marcus felt his pulse spike. Serafina hadn't prepared him for this question. In his ear, her voice was urgent. "Tell them you don't know. Act frustrated that she doesn't trust you with that information." Marcus let his frustration show. "I don't know. She doesn't tell me everything. Hell, she barely tells me anything. She keeps a safe in our apartment, but I don't have the combination. And before you ask, I'm not breaking into my own wife's safe. I'm cooperating with you, but I'm not a thief." The woman studied him for a long moment. Marcus felt sweat running down his spine. Had he oversold it? Been too defensive? "Understandable," she finally said, "but disappointing. Those files would be quite valuable to certain parties." "Then certain parties should ask my wife directly instead of using me as an intermediary." "Oh, we will." The woman closed her tablet. "You've been very helpful tonight, Mr. Vale. More helpful than you probably realize." Something in her tone made Marcus's stomach drop. "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means we now know exactly what we needed to know." The woman leaned forward, and her smile widened. "Including the fact that everything you just told me was a lie." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. "What are you—" "The Singapore bank doesn't handle that kind of transaction. The Geneva meeting you mentioned is scheduled at a hotel that burned down 3 months ago. And the accounts you described, they belong to operations your wife's father shut down years before he died." The woman's voice was cold, clinical. "Did you really think we wouldn't verify, that we wouldn't have people checking every detail in real time?" In Marcus's ear, Serafina's voice came through tight and controlled. "Stay calm. Stick to denial. I'm on my way." But Marcus couldn't stay calm. His heart was hammering so hard he thought it might break through his chest. "I told you what I know," he managed. "If the information is wrong, that's not my fault. Stop." The woman raised her hand. "We both know Serafina fed you those lies, which means she knew we were coming, which means she's been playing us since the moment you walked into this car." The woman pulled out her phone and made a call, spoke rapidly in German, listened. Her expression darkened. "Change of plans," she said when she hung up. To the driver, in English, "Take us to the secondary location." "Wait." Marcus reached for the door handle. It was locked. "I answered your questions. You said—" "I said a lot of things. Most of them lies." The woman's voice was flat. "You're not going home tonight, Mr. Vale. Not until your wife understands that there are consequences for playing games with people who don't lose." The car accelerated. Marcus lunged for the door again, yanking on the handle. Nothing. The windows were tinted so dark he couldn't see outside, couldn't tell where they were going. In his ear, Serafina's voice was sharp. "Marcus, listen to me. Stay calm. Tell me what you see. Any landmarks, street signs, anything." "I can't see anything," Marcus said out loud, his voice rising. "The windows." The woman reached over and yanked the communication device from his ear, examined it briefly, then crushed it under her heel. "Clever," she said, "but not clever enough." Marcus's hands were shaking. His breath came in short gasps. This wasn't supposed to happen. Serafina had promised she'd keep him safe, had promised this was controlled, but nothing about this felt controlled. "Where are you taking me?" Marcus demanded, trying to inject authority into his voice and failing completely. "Somewhere private. Somewhere your wife will have to come find you." The woman settled back in her seat. "Don't worry, Mr. Vale. We're not going to kill you. You're worth far more alive, at least for now." The car drove for what felt like hours, but was probably 30 minutes. Marcus tried to keep track of turns, of stops and starts, anything that might help Serafina find him. But panic was making it hard to think clearly. They pulled into what sounded like a garage. The door opened. 2 men Marcus hadn't seen before grabbed his arms and pulled him out of the car. Big men. Professional. The kind who broke bones for a living. They were in an industrial building, concrete floors, high ceilings. The kind of space that had probably been a warehouse once but was now just empty and cold. No windows. One door. No way out except through the men who'd brought him here. "Sit," the woman commanded, pointing to a metal chair in the center of the room. Marcus sat. Not because he wanted to, but because his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. The woman pulled out her phone again and set it up on a small tripod. The camera pointed directly at Marcus. Then she dialed a number and waited. "Mrs. Vale," she said when someone picked up. "I have something that belongs to you." She turned the phone so the camera faced Marcus. He could see himself on the screen, pale, sweating, terrified. Everything he'd spent his entire life trying not to be. "Marcus?" Serafina's voice came through the phone speaker, tight and controlled, but Marcus could hear the fear underneath. "Are you hurt?" "No," Marcus managed. "Not yet." "How touching." The woman turned the phone back to herself. "Here's the situation, Mrs. Vale. Your husband failed his audition rather spectacularly, but he's still useful as leverage. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to give us what we want, or we're going to start sending him back to you in pieces." "If you hurt him," Serafina's voice was ice. "You'll do what? Call in favors from your father's old network? We've already accounted for that. Right now, 3 separate teams are moving on Luciano Bellori, Arthur Blackthorne, and that charming driver of yours. By morning, your entire support structure will be neutralized." Marcus felt his stomach turn over. This wasn't just about him. They were going after everyone. "What do you want?" Serafina asked, and Marcus had never heard her sound so defeated. "Your father's files, complete and unedited. Every name, every account, every piece of leverage he accumulated. You have 6 hours to deliver them to an address I'm about to send you. Come alone. No weapons, no backup. And maybe, if you're very cooperative, we'll let your husband live." "How do I know you won't kill him anyway?" "You don't." The woman smiled. "But what choice do you have?" She ended the call. The room fell silent except for Marcus's ragged breathing. "Comfortable?" the woman asked, not really caring about the answer. Marcus didn't respond. His mind was racing. 6 hours. Serafina had 6 hours to trade everything her father built for Marcus's life. Everything she'd been protecting for years. And it was Marcus's fault. His ego. His need to feel important. His stupid decision to get in that car the first time. He'd destroyed her. The woman left, taking her phone and her smile with her. The 2 big men stayed, standing by the door like statues. Marcus sat in the metal chair and tried not to throw up. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt broken. Marcus's thoughts spun in circles. Serafina would come. She had to come. She wouldn't just let them kill him. But why should she? What had he ever done to deserve her protection? He treated her like furniture for 7 years, humiliated her publicly, ignored her, dismissed her. Maybe she'd let them keep him. Maybe he deserved it. Around what Marcus guessed was 4 in the morning, the door opened. But it wasn't the woman who entered. It was a man Marcus had never seen before. Older, maybe 60, with iron gray hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite by someone who'd given up halfway through. He wore an expensive suit that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. "Mr. Vale," the man said, his accent thick German. "My name is Klaus Kessler. You've been causing me quite a bit of trouble." Marcus said nothing. His throat was too dry to speak. Kessler pulled up another chair and sat down across from Marcus, close enough that Marcus could smell his cologne. Expensive, European, the kind that probably cost more than Marcus's first car. "Your wife," Kessler said conversationally, "is a fascinating woman. Did you know that?" "Of course not. You never bothered to learn who she really was." He smiled. "Vittorio De Luca's daughter. We thought she was dead, or lost, or had become American and soft. But then 3 weeks ago, she reminded us all why her father was feared across 3 continents." "What do you want from me?" Marcus finally managed. "Nothing. You're just bait, a convenient tool to draw out the real target." Kessler leaned forward. "But I'm curious about something. Why? Why would a woman like Serafina De Luca marry someone like you? You're not special, Mr. Vale. You're not particularly smart or talented. You built a moderately successful company, but nothing extraordinary. So what was it? What did she see in you?" Marcus wanted to say something cutting, something that would hurt, but he had nothing. Because Kessler was right. Marcus wasn't special, had never been special, just good at pretending. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "Honesty. How refreshing." Kessler stood. "Well, Mr. Vale, you should know that regardless of what Serafina does tonight, you're not going home. We can't have you running around Manhattan knowing what you know. So when this is over, you're going to disappear. Permanently. She'll come after you. Let her try. Kessler walked toward the door, then paused. Actually, I hope she does. It will give me an excuse to finish what should have been done when her father died. The DeLuca name should have ended with Vittorio. Tonight, we're going to correct that mistake. He left. The door closed. Marcus sat alone with the two silent guards and the absolute certainty that he was going to die in this cold warehouse. But worse than his own death was the knowledge that Serafina was walking into a trap, that she was sacrificing everything to save someone who'd never deserved her in the first place. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to find something inside himself worth saving. He came up empty. Serafina stood in her apartment, staring at the safe built into the wall behind a painting Marcus had bought at auction without asking her opinion. The safe held everything. 40 years of her father's work. Names of politicians who could be bought, judges who'd taken bribes, businessmen with secrets, criminal organizations with hierarchies mapped out in meticulous detail, blackmail material that could topple governments. Her father had called it his insurance policy. Serafina called it a curse. She entered the combination, her mother's birthday, because even Vittorio De Luca had been sentimental about some things. And the safe opened with a soft click. Inside were 3 thick folders and a small leather journal. Her father's handwriting filled every page. Names, dates, accounts, sins recorded with the precision of a man who understood that information was the only currency that truly mattered. Serafina pulled out the folders and laid them on the dining table. Then she called Luciano. "Don't," Luciano said before she could speak. "Don't give them what they want. They have Marcus. Marcus is one man. These files are leverage against hundreds of people. You give them up, you lose everything." "I don't care about leverage. I care about—" Serafina stopped. What did she care about? A husband who'd betrayed her trust? Who'd treated her like decoration? Who'd gotten himself kidnapped through sheer stupidity? "You care about him," Luciano finished quietly, "even after everything, even knowing what it will cost. He's my husband. That's not good enough anymore, Serafina. You need to decide if you're going to be who your father raised you to be, or if you're going to be the woman who throws away an empire for a man who doesn't deserve it." Serafina looked at the files, thought about her father, about the things he'd done to build this network, the people he'd destroyed, the lives he'd ruined, all in the name of power, control, respect. And she thought about Marcus, flawed, egotistical, weak, but still human, still someone who'd looked at her across a coffee shop 7 years ago and smiled like she was the only person in the world. That man was buried somewhere under the ego and the performance. Serafina had to believe that. "I'm going," she said. "Then you're a fool." "Probably, but I'm a fool who keeps her promises." Serafina grabbed the files. "Tell Arthur to be ready. If this goes wrong, you know what to do." She hung up before Luciano could argue further. Her driver, David, who'd been with her family since before she was born, was waiting downstairs. He took one look at the files in her hands and his expression darkened. "Mrs. Vale, I know what you're going to say. Don't. Your father would never. My father would have let Marcus die and then burned down half of Frankfurt in retaliation. But I'm not my father." Serafina got into the car. "Take me to the address they sent." David drove in silence. The city was dead at this hour, just streetlights and empty sidewalks and the occasional taxi cruising for fares that didn't exist. Serafina watched Manhattan pass by and wondered if this was the last time she'd see it. The address was a warehouse in Red Hook, Brooklyn. Industrial. Isolated. Perfect for things people didn't want witnessed. David pulled up to the entrance and put the car in park. "I'm coming with you." "No." "Serafina? If I don't walk out in 30 minutes, call Arthur. He'll know what to do." Serafina opened the door, the files clutched against her chest. "And David? Thank you. For everything." She didn't wait for his response. Just walked toward the warehouse entrance, each step feeling like a mile. The door opened before she reached it. The woman from Marcus's description stood there, backlit by fluorescent lights, her expression unreadable. "Mrs. Vale?" "Right on time." "I brought what you wanted." Serafina held up the files. Now give me my husband. All in good time. First, we verify authenticity. The woman gestured inside. After you. Serafina walked into the warehouse. The space was huge and empty, except for a cluster of people in the center. She recognized Klaus Kessler immediately. Her father had shown her pictures, had warned her about the Kessler family and their ambitions. The old man stood with his arms crossed, flanked by armed men who looked like they'd killed more people than they could count. And in the center, tied to a metal chair, was Marcus. He looked terrible. His face was pale and sweaty. His expensive suit was wrinkled and stained. His eyes were wide and frightened, but he was alive. Marcus, Serafina said quietly. Serafina, don't... Marcus started, but one of the guards hit him across the face. Blood sprayed from his mouth. Serafina felt something cold and sharp settle in her chest. Touch him again, and I'll kill you myself. Brave words, Kessler said, stepping forward, but empty ones. You're in no position to threaten anyone, Miss DeLuca. It's Mrs. Vale, actually. I kept my married name. Serafina held out the files. Here, everything you wanted. My father's complete network. Now let him go. Kessler took the files and handed them to an assistant who immediately began photographing each page. The process took 15 minutes. 15 minutes where Serafina stood perfectly still, her hands clenched into fists, watching Marcus breathe. Finally, the assistant nodded. It's authentic. Everything's here. Excellent, Kessler smiled. Thank you, Mrs. Vale. You've been most cooperative. So we're done. Let him go. Not quite. Kessler pulled out a gun. It was small and black and looked almost casual in his hand. You see, Mrs. Vale, the problem with people like you is that you never truly walk away. You gave us these files, yes. But how long before you rebuild? Before you call in new favors? Before you become a problem again? Serafina felt her blood turn to ice. We had a deal. Deals are for people who trust each other. I don't trust you. I don't trust anyone named DeLuca. Kessler raised the gun, pointing it directly at Marcus. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to kill your husband, and then I'm going to kill you. And the DeLuca name will finally die like it should have years ago. No! Serafina lunged forward, but two guards grabbed her arms, holding her back. You got what you wanted. Let him go. I got files, documents, information. Kessler's voice was cold. But I also get peace of mind, and that requires eliminating threats permanently. He cocked the gun. Marcus looked at Serafina, and for the first time since she'd known him, his eyes were clear. No ego, no performance, just a man looking at his wife and understanding finally what he'd cost her. I'm sorry, Marcus said. For everything. Kessler pulled the trigger. The sound was deafening in the empty warehouse. But the bullet never hit Marcus, because at the last possible second, the woman who'd orchestrated everything, who'd captured Marcus, who'd set the trap, who'd played both sides, threw herself in front of him. She took the bullet in her chest and went down hard, blood spreading across her expensive coat. Everything stopped. Kessler stared at his associate, his gun still raised, confusion replacing his cold certainty. What? He started. The woman coughed blood and smiled. You really thought I'd let you kill Vittorio's daughter? Then she died. The warehouse exploded into chaos. Doors burst open from 3 different directions. Men poured in. Not police, not anyone official, but the kind of people who operated in shadows and asked questions never. Luciano was in front, moving with the efficiency of someone half his age. Arthur Blackthorne was right behind him, followed by operators Marcus recognized from magazines as former special forces. Gunfire erupted. The Kessler guards went down quickly, professionally, without mercy. Kessler himself tried to run, but Luciano caught him, slamming him against the concrete wall hard enough to crack bone. It was over in less than a minute. Serafina broke free from her guards the moment they fell and ran to Marcus. She untied him with shaking hands, her eyes scanning for injuries. Are you hurt? Marcus, look at me. Are you hurt? I'm fine. Marcus touched his face where he'd been hit. I'm okay. Luciano appeared beside them, his suit somehow still perfect despite the violence. We need to leave. Now. This place will be swarming with actual police in 10 minutes. The woman, Serafina said, looking at the body. She worked for you? For your father, one of his oldest assets. She's been embedded with the Kessler family for 15 years, waiting for exactly this moment. Luciano pulled Serafina to her feet. Your father knew someone would eventually come for you. He made sure you'd be protected even after his death. Serafina looked at the files scattered across the floor in the chaos. Kessler was unconscious against the wall. His organization was destroyed. The threat was over. But the cost was written in blood on the concrete. Come on, Luciano said gently. Let's get you both home. Yes. They rode back to Manhattan in silence. Marcus sat next to Serafina, both of them covered in other people's blood, neither speaking. What was there to say? Marcus had gotten himself kidnapped. Serafina had sacrificed her father's legacy to save him. People had died. And for what? When they finally reached the apartment, Marcus went straight to the bathroom and threw up. When he finished, he stripped off his ruined clothes and stood under the shower until the water ran cold. But no amount of soap could wash away the feeling of that gun pointed at his face. The certainty of death. The knowledge that Serafina had traded everything for him. He found her on the terrace, still wearing the blood-stained clothes, staring out at the city as dawn broke over Manhattan. I'm sorry, Marcus said, because it was the only thing he had left. I know. I thought I could handle it. You thought you mattered more than you do. Serafina's voice was flat, empty. You thought your ego was more important than survival, and you almost got us both killed because of it. Marcus had no defense. She was right about all of it. I'll sign whatever you want, he said quietly. Divorce papers, resignation from the company. I'll disappear if that's what you need. I'll stop. Serafina turned to look at him, and Marcus saw something in her eyes he couldn't identify. I'm tired of you offering to quit, to run away, to take the easy path out of difficult situations. Then what do you want? I want you to grow up, Marcus. I want you to look at what happened tonight and actually learn something from it. I want you to become the man I thought I married, instead of the child you've been for 7 years. I don't know how. Then figure it out. Serafina walked past him, heading inside. Because this is your last chance. There won't be another one. She disappeared into the bedroom and closed the door. Marcus stood alone on the terrace as the sun rose over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that looked like fire. Or blood. Or both. He thought about the gun pointed at his face, about Serafina standing there willing to trade everything for his worthless life, about the woman who died to protect them both, about Luciano and Arthur and David and all the people who'd risked themselves because Serafina asked them to. And he realized something fundamental had broken inside him tonight. The need to be important, to be admired, to be the center of every room. It was gone. Stripped away by terror and shame and the absolute certainty that he'd been living his entire life wrong. Marcus went back inside, grabbed his laptop, and started making calls. Not to repair his image, not to spin the story, not to protect his ego, but to actually fix the things he'd broken, to apologize to people he'd stepped on, to settle debts he'd ignored, to become, slowly and painfully, someone who deserved a second chance. He didn't know if it would work, didn't know if Serafina would ever forgive him. But for the first time in his life, Marcus Vail was going to try being honest instead of important, and that terrified him more than the gun had. 3 days later, Luciano showed up at Marcus's office unannounced. He walked in without knocking, sat down across from Marcus's desk, and studied him with those cold, assessing eyes. You look terrible, Luciano observed. Marcus probably did. He hadn't slept more than a few hours each night, had been working 18-hour days trying to clean up years of careless business practices. His expensive suits hung loose. His face was gaunt. I'm busy, Marcus said. I can see that. Luciano picked up one of the documents on Marcus's desk. Severance agreements for employees. Marcus had fired unfairly. Settlement offers for partners he'd screwed over. Apologies written in legal language, but still somehow personal. This is unexpected. I'm trying to fix things. Why? Serafina owns everything now anyway. You could just walk away. Because I don't want to be the person I was anymore. Marcus met Luciano's eyes. And because maybe if I actually become someone decent, my wife might look at me without seeing a failure. Luciano was quiet for a long moment. Then he set down the document and leaned forward. When Serafina's father was dying, he made me promise something. He made me promise that if his daughter ever needed protection, I would give it without question. I've kept that promise for 5 years. I know. She's lucky to have you. But here's what you need to understand, Mr. Vale. I'm not protecting you. I'm protecting her. And if you continue being a liability, if you make her choose between you and her safety, I will solve that problem permanently. Do we understand each other? Marcus felt his blood run cold, but he nodded. Yeah, we understand each other. Good. Luciano stood. Serafina is meeting with what's left of the Kessler organization today, negotiating terms, making it clear that there will be no retaliation, no further conflict. She's cleaning up the mess your stupidity created. I know. Do you understand what she's sacrificing for you? Luciano's voice was sharp. She gave up her father's legacy, burned bridges that took 40 years to build, made herself vulnerable to every vulture in Europe, all to save a man who publicly humiliated her and nearly got her killed. I know, Marcus repeated, his voice breaking, and I don't know how to fix it. You can't, that's the point. Some things can't be fixed, Mr. Vale. They can only be survived. Luciano walked to the door, then paused. But if you actually become someone worth saving, maybe she'll decide you're worth keeping. Maybe. He left. Marcus sat alone in his office, surrounded by paperwork and apologies and the wreckage of his old life. And he kept working, because it was all he had left. Serafina returned to the apartment late that night. Marcus was still awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of water he hadn't touched and a stack of documents he'd been staring at for hours. She looked exhausted, older, like the past week had aged her years. How did it go? Marcus asked quietly. It's done. The Kessler family is dissolved. Their assets are being distributed. There won't be any more attacks. Serafina set her bag on the counter. It cost me almost everything, but it's done. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. It doesn't change anything. They stood in silence. The kitchen felt huge and empty, like the space between them had become physical. I've been thinking, Serafina said finally, about us, about what comes next. Marcus felt his heart stop. Okay. I don't know if I can forgive you, Marcus. I don't know if I even want to anymore. You spent 7 years treating me like furniture, and then when I finally revealed who I really was, you responded by almost getting us both killed because your ego couldn't handle being protected. I know. But, Serafina looked at him directly. Luciano tells me you've been working, actually working, fixing things, being honest. Is that true? I'm trying. Why? Why now? Why not 5 years ago, or 3 years ago, or literally any point before you got a gun pointed at your face? Marcus thought about lying, about giving her some noble reason, but he was done with lies. Because I finally ran out of places to hide, he said simply. Because the person I was pretending to be almost destroyed the only real thing I ever had. And because I looked at you standing in that warehouse willing to die for me, and I realized I didn't deserve it. Serafina's expression didn't change. You didn't. I know. But maybe if I spend the rest of my life trying, I might someday. Or maybe I won't. But either way, I'm done being the person I was. Serafina walked to the window and looked out at Manhattan. The city glittered below them, indifferent to their problems, continuing on regardless of whether their marriage survived or imploded. I'm not moving back into the bedroom, she said finally. Not yet, maybe not ever. I need time to figure out if there's anything left worth saving between us. I understand. And you're going to keep working, keep fixing the things you broke, keep proving that this change is real and not just another performance. I will. And Marcus? She turned to look at him. If you ever put yourself in danger like that again, if you ever let your ego override your survival instinct, I will not save you. I will let you fall. Do you understand me? Yes. She walked toward the guest bedroom, then stopped. There's something else you should know. The files I gave Kessler, they were fake. Marcus blinked. What? My father kept 3 sets. 1 real, 2 false. I gave them false information designed to lead them into legal traps and expose their network. By tomorrow morning, half the Kessler organization will be under investigation by international authorities. The other half will be tearing itself apart, trying to figure out who leaked what. But the woman said they verified that the documents looked authentic. They didn't verify the contents. That takes weeks. Serafina's smile was cold. My father taught me never to give up real leverage, only the illusion of it. Marcus stared at her. So you were never actually sacrificing your father's legacy? Oh, I was sacrificing plenty. Just not that. Her smile faded. I burned bridges tonight, Marcus. Called in favors I can't replace. Made enemies I'll be dealing with for years. All to save you, so don't ever think the cost wasn't real. She went into the guest bedroom and closed the door softly. Marcus sat alone in the kitchen, his mind reeling. Even in crisis, even when it looked like she was giving up everything, Serafina had been 10 steps ahead. Playing a game Marcus couldn't see, operating on a level he'd never reached, and he'd spent 7 years treating her like she was nothing special. The thought made him sick. Marcus stood up, walked to his office, and pulled out a notebook. Started writing names of people he'd wronged, specific actions he needed to take, a plan for becoming someone better. He wrote until the sun came up, and for the first time in 7 years, Marcus Vail went to work with a purpose that had nothing to do with his ego. It was a start. Maybe not enough, but a start. Marcus spent the next 3 months rebuilding himself from the inside out. He started with the small things. Arriving at the office before his employees instead of after. Learning their names. Actually learning them, not just the ones who reported directly to him. He ate lunch in the company cafeteria instead of expensive restaurants. He stopped buying things he didn't need. He sold the sports cars, donated the designer suits he'd collected like trophies. People noticed. At first they thought it was a performance, another Marcus Vail manipulation designed to achieve some hidden goal. But as weeks turned into months and the changes stuck, something shifted. Employees who'd avoided him started staying when he entered rooms. Partners who'd written him off started returning calls. And Serafina watched from a distance, saying nothing. She still slept in the guest bedroom, still left for meetings Marcus wasn't invited to, still operated in that shadow world he was only beginning to understand. But sometimes Marcus would catch her looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe something like curiosity, like she was waiting to see if the change was real. Marcus was determined to prove it was. He settled debts with suppliers he'd squeezed too hard. He rehired employees he'd fired out of spite and apologized personally to each one. He restructured Vail Dominion from a company built on aggression into one built on sustainability. Profit margins dropped. Marcus didn't care. He was building something that would last instead of something that just looked impressive. David Chen called him into his office one afternoon in late September. Marcus, I need to show you something. David pulled up financial projections on his computer. The restructuring you've implemented, the new contracts, the employee benefits, the ethical sourcing requirements. It's going to cost us approximately $30 million over the next 2 years. Marcus's old instinct was to panic, to find a way to cut corners, to prioritize money over everything else. But he took a breath and looked at the numbers differently. Can the company survive it? He asked. Yes. Barely, but we'll be vulnerable during the transition. Then we do it anyway. David stared at him. You're serious. I spent 7 years building a company that made money but destroyed people. I'm done with that. Marcus closed the laptop. If Vail Dominion can't survive being ethical, then maybe it doesn't deserve to survive. Serafina is going to be impressed. I'm not doing this for Serafina. Marcus stood. I'm doing it because it's right, and because I can't look at myself in the mirror anymore if I don't. David smiled, the first genuine smile Marcus had seen from him in years. Then maybe there's hope for you after all. But hope was expensive, and Marcus was about to learn exactly how much it cost. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon in October. Marcus was in his office reviewing supply chain agreements when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Vail. A man's voice. American accent, but with an edge Marcus couldn't place. You don't know me, but I know quite a bit about you. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Who is this? Someone who represents certain interests in your wife's former world. We've been watching your little redemption arc with great interest. I'm hanging up. Your wife gave false files to the Kessler family. Did you know that? Of course you did. She's clever that way. But what you don't know is that those false files contained information that led directly to 17 arrests across 4 countries. Billions in assets frozen, operations exposed that took decades to build. Marcus's hand gripped the phone harder. Good. They were criminals. They were partners, allies, people who'd worked with your wife's father for years, and now they're very, very angry. The man's voice was calm, clinical. Which brings me to why I'm calling. Your wife destroyed a carefully balanced ecosystem, Mr. Vale, and ecosystems don't like being disturbed, so certain parties have decided that consequences are in order. If you're threatening Serafina, oh no, we learned that lesson from Kessler. Going after Serafina directly is expensive and complicated. But you? The man laughed. You're easy, vulnerable, and your death would hurt her far more than anything we could do directly. Marcus felt ice flood his veins. When? Soon. Maybe today. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe while you're walking home tonight. Maybe while you sleep. The beauty of uncertainty is that it makes people careless. They get tired of being afraid. They let their guard down. The man paused. Give Serafina our regards, Mr. Vale. Tell her we're disappointed she chose love over loyalty. The line went dead. Marcus sat frozen for 10 seconds. Then he grabbed his phone and called the secure number Luciano had given him months ago. 3 rings, 4, 5. Come on. Val. Luciano's voice was sharp. What's wrong? I got a call. Threats. They're coming after me to hurt Serafina. When? They didn't say. Soon. Maybe today. Luciano cursed in Italian. Stay in your office. Lock the door. I'm sending people now. Where's Serafina? At a meeting across town. I'm calling her next. Marcus, do not leave that building. Do not trust anyone except the people I send. Understand? Yeah, I understand. Marcus hung up and locked his office door. His hands were shaking. He looked out the window at Manhattan spread below him. The same view that used to make him feel invincible now just made him feel exposed. How many of those windows held someone with a rifle? How many of those cars on the street contained people waiting to kill him? His phone buzzed. Text from Luciano. 2 men arriving in 5 minutes. Alessandro and Victor. Do not open door for anyone else. Marcus waited. The minutes crawled by like hours. He could hear normal office sounds outside his door. Phones ringing, people talking, the mundane sounds of business continuing while Marcus's world was falling apart for the second time in 4 months. A knock. 3 sharp raps. Mr. Vale? Luciano sent us. Marcus looked through the peephole. 2 men in dark suits. One was massive, easily 6'5" with shoulders that looked like they could break through walls. The other was smaller but somehow more dangerous, with eyes that tracked everything and hands that never stopped moving. Marcus opened the door. Alessandro, the big one said, not offering his hand. This is Victor. We're taking you somewhere safe. Where? Does it matter? Victor's accent was thick. Russian, maybe. You stay here, you die. You come with us. Maybe you live. Simple choice. Marcus grabbed his coat. Let's go. They moved through the building quickly, but not desperately. Alessandro walked in front, his body positioned to absorb any threat. Victor stayed close to Marcus, one hand always near his waist where Marcus assumed he carried a weapon. Employees stared as they passed. Marcus didn't care. They took the stairs instead of the elevator. 19 floors down, Victor barely breathing hard while Marcus's legs burned. They emerged in the parking garage where a black SUV waited, engine running. In, Alessandro ordered. Marcus climbed in the back. Victor got in beside him. Alessandro took the driver's seat and pulled out of the garage smoothly. No squealing tires, nothing to attract attention. Where are we going? Marcus asked. Bellori Estate, upstate, 3 hours. Victor was scanning the street, his eyes never still. We have protocol for this. Serafina will meet us there. They drove in silence. Marcus watched the city give way to suburbs, then to rural New York, trees and hills and spaces between buildings. His phone buzzed constantly, emails from his office, calls from David Chen, Messages from board members wondering where he'd disappeared to. Marcus ignored them all. Around hour 2, Victor's phone buzzed. He answered in Russian, listened, his face going hard. He hung up and looked at Alessandro. "We have a problem." "What kind?" "The kind with guns. 3 cars following us since we left Manhattan. They're making their move." Marcus looked out the back window. Sure enough, 3 black sedans were accelerating, closing the distance. Alessandro cursed and floored the gas pedal. The SUV surged forward, the speedometer climbing past 90. The sedans matched their pace. "How far to the estate?" Victor asked. 20 minutes at this speed." "We won't make it." Victor pulled out a weapon, something compact and lethal looking. "They'll try to box us in, force us off the road." Marcus felt his pulse hammering in his throat. "What do we do?" "You stay down and don't die." Victor checked his weapon. "Alessandro, next exit. We make a stand there." Alessandro nodded and took the exit at 70 miles per hour, the SUV tilting dangerously, but holding the turn. The sedans followed. They were on a smaller road now, trees pressing close on both sides, nowhere to run. Alessandro slammed the brakes and spun the wheel. The SUV skidded sideways, blocking the road. "Out! Now!" Marcus tumbled out of the vehicle as Victor dragged him toward the tree line. Gunfire erupted behind them, sharp cracks that shattered the rural quiet. Marcus ran, branches whipping his face, his expensive shoes slipping on leaves. Victor shoved him behind a thick oak tree. "Stay here. Head down." "What about you?" "Doing my job." Victor moved back toward the road, returning fire at shapes Marcus could barely see through the trees. Alessandro was behind the SUV, his massive frame somehow hidden behind an engine block, his own weapon barking short, controlled bursts. The sedans had stopped. Men poured out. Marcus counted 6, maybe 7, all armed, all moving with professional precision. This wasn't some amateur hit. These were trained killers. One of them flanked left, moving through the trees toward Marcus's position. Victor saw him and shifted, trying to cut him off, but another shooter had Victor pinned. The flanking man got closer, 30 yards, 20. Marcus saw him clearly now. Young, maybe 30, cold eyes scanning for targets. He had his weapon raised, moving carefully through the underbrush. 10 yards. The man saw Marcus, raised his weapon. Time slowed. Marcus saw the man's finger tighten on the trigger, saw the barrel pointing directly at his face, saw his own death in the cold certainty of that aim. Then Alessandro appeared from nowhere and tackled the shooter, driving him into the ground with the force of a freight train. They struggled. The gun went off. Once, twice, and then went silent. Alessandro stood up slowly. Blood spread across his shoulder, but he was alive. The shooter wasn't. "Clear!" Victor shouted from somewhere in the trees. The gunfire stopped. Marcus counted 4 bodies near the road. The other sedans were empty, engines still running, doors hanging open. The remaining shooters had retreated or died. Alessandro walked back to Marcus, his face pale from blood loss. "You hit?" Marcus looked down at himself. He was covered in dirt and leaves and terror, but no blood. "No, I'm okay. You're shot." "Flesh wound. I've had worse." Alessandro pressed his hand against his shoulder. "Victor, status." 2 down here, the rest ran. Victor emerged from the trees, his suit torn and muddy, but otherwise intact. "We need to move. They'll call for backup." "Can you drive?" Victor asked Alessandro. "Yeah, get him in the car." They climbed back into the bullet-riddled SUV. The windshield was spiderwebbed with cracks. One of the tires was flat, but the engine still ran. Alessandro drove on the rim, sparks flying, heading deeper into rural New York while Victor called for help. Marcus sat in the back, his hands shaking so badly he had to tuck them under his legs. He'd almost died. Again. For the second time in 4 months, Marcus had looked at his own mortality and barely survived. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Both of you. You didn't have to—" "Yes, we did," Alessandro cut him off. Serafina asked, "That's enough." "Why? Why risk your lives for me?" Victor turned in his seat. His face was hard, but his eyes were human. "Because people like you don't understand what loyalty means in our world. When someone like Serafina De Luca asks for help, you help. No questions. No conditions. Because someday you might need her help in return." That's how this works. I don't deserve it. Probably not. Victor smiled without warmth. But she thinks you might. Someday. So we keep you alive long enough to find out if she's right. They drove for another 30 minutes before reaching the Bellary estate, a sprawling compound hidden behind stone walls and iron gates. Armed men checked the vehicle, then waved them through. Luciano was waiting at the main house, his face tight with controlled fury. Get Alessandro to medical. Victor, debrief with security. Vale, you're with me. Marcus followed Luciano inside. The house was old money and old world. Dark wood paneling, paintings that probably cost more than Marcus's penthouse, furniture that looked like it had survived revolutions. Luciano led him to a study and closed the door. Sit. Marcus sat. Luciano poured 2 glasses of something amber and pushed one across the desk. Marcus drank without tasting it. His hands were still shaking. 7 men, Luciano said. Professional contractors. 3 killed, 4 escaped. They knew your route, knew your security protocol. Someone leaked information. From where? That's what we're determining. Luciano's voice was ice. But Marcus, this is your life now. You married into a world where death is always one decision away. You stay with Serafina, you accept these risks. You understand that? Where is she? On her way. She was across the city when the attack started. She's... Luciano paused. Upset is not adequate. She's furious. And when Serafina is furious, people die. The door opened. Serafina entered like a storm given human form. Her face was pale and tight. Her eyes were black fire. She looked at Marcus, scanning him from head to toe, checking for injuries. You're bleeding, she said flatly. Marcus looked down. His shirt had blood on it. Not his. Alessandro's probably, from when the big man had tackled the shooter. It's not mine. I'm fine. You're not fine. You were almost killed. Again. Serafina's voice was shaking. Because of me. Because I gave those files to Kessler. Because I destroyed their network. Because I keep trying to save you when maybe I should just let you go. Serafina. No, listen to me. She moved closer, and Marcus could see tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep protecting you while simultaneously painting targets on your back. I can't rebuild a marriage with someone who's always one bullet away from death. I can't. Her voice broke. She turned away, her shoulders shaking. Marcus stood, crossed the space between them, put his hand on her shoulder. She flinched but didn't pull away. I know, Marcus said quietly. I know this is my fault. All of it. I brought another woman to that gala. I got myself kidnapped. I keep being the weak link that puts you in danger. I know that. Then why are you still here? Serafina's voice was raw. Why haven't you filed for divorce and moved to California where no one knows your name? Why are you still making me choose between keeping you safe and keeping myself sane? Because I love you. The words came out simple and honest and true. Marcus hadn't planned them. Hadn't rehearsed. They just existed, finally spoken after 7 years of being buried under ego and performance. Serafina turned to look at him. Her face was wet. You don't even know me. I'm starting to. And the person I'm discovering is extraordinary, terrifying, brilliant, someone who spent years hiding her light because I was too stupid to appreciate it. Marcus took a breath. I don't deserve you. Never have. But I want to spend whatever time I have left becoming someone who might. That's not enough. I know. But it's all I have. They stood there, inches apart, 7 years of mistakes and lies and missed chances heavy between them. Luciano cleared his throat. As touching as this is, we have a more immediate problem. The attack today was coordinated, professional, expensive. Someone with significant resources wants you dead, Marcus, and they're not going to stop because you had a moment of emotional honesty. Then what do we do? Serafina asked. We find who ordered it, and we end them. Luciano's voice was cold, final. But that requires Marcus making a choice. He can stay here, protected, living in hiding for however long this takes. Or he can be bait, again, this time with proper preparation. Marcus felt his stomach turn. Bait how? We let it leak that you're vulnerable, isolated, minimal security. We make it look like Serafina has given up protecting you. And when they come for you again, and they will, we're ready. We capture them. We learn who hired them, and we eliminate the threat at its source. You're talking about using my husband as live bait, Serafina said, her voice dangerous. I'm talking about ending this permanently. Otherwise, Marcus spends the rest of his life running, and eventually they'll get lucky. Luciano looked at Marcus. But it's your choice. Hide or fight. What kind of man are you going to be? Marcus thought about the old Marcus, the one who would have hidden without shame. Who would have let other people solve his problems while he protected his own skin? That Marcus was dead, killed in a warehouse 4 months ago. What do you need me to do? Marcus asked. Serafina grabbed his arm. No, absolutely not. I won't let you. It's not your choice. Marcus looked at her directly. I'm done being protected, done hiding behind you while you take all the risks. If this is my life now, I need to learn how to survive it. You'll get killed. Maybe, but at least I'll die as someone worth saving. Serafina stared at him, searching his face for something. Fear, maybe, or doubt. But whatever she found there must have been different than what she expected because her expression shifted. If we do this, she said slowly, you follow every order. No improvising, no heroics. You do exactly what Luciano says when he says it. Agreed? Agreed. Luciano nodded. Then we start preparing. Victor and Alessandro will train you in basic defensive techniques. We'll set the trap for 3 days from now. That gives us time to spread the right rumors, and for you to learn enough not to die immediately. 3 days to learn how not to die, Marcus said. That's optimistic. It's realistic. You won't be a fighter, but you might survive long enough for the real fighters to save you. Luciano stood. Welcome to your wife's world, Mr. Vale. Try not to embarrass her. The next 72 hours were the hardest of Marcus's life. Victor and Alessandro, the latter patched up and back to work despite taking a bullet, put Marcus through training that made his body scream. They taught him how to move under fire, how to use cover, how to recognize threat patterns, how to survive the first 30 seconds of an attack because that's when amateurs died. Marcus's hands blistered from weapons training. His body ached from tactical exercises. He threw up twice from exhaustion. But he kept going, because Serafina watched. Not always visibly, but Marcus felt her presence. She'd appear in doorways during breaks, sit silently during strategy sessions, her face unreadable, but her eyes always tracking Marcus, measuring, judging whether he'd break. He didn't break. On the third night, Luciano assembled everyone in the estate's war room. Actual maps on the walls, photographs of targets, communications equipment that looked military grade. Here's the setup, Luciano began. Tomorrow night, Marcus returns to Manhattan. Minimal security. We leaked that he's attending a charity function at the Riverside Museum. East side, lots of exits, relatively isolated at night. Perfect place for an ambush. And when they come, Serafina asked, we have 30 operators positioned throughout the building. Rooftop surveillance, perimeter control. The moment they make their move, we collapse on them from all sides. Luciano pointed to the museum layout. Marcus will be in the main gallery, visible but protected. The attackers won't know they're walking into a trap until it closes. What if they just shoot him from distance? Victor asked. Sniper, clean, simple. The museum is a historic building. Bulletproof glass on all exterior windows. Upgraded last year specifically because wealthy donors were worried about that exact scenario. Luciano smiled without warmth. If they want Marcus dead, they have to come inside. And inside is where we kill them. Marcus felt his mouth go dry. And if something goes wrong? Then you use what we taught you and survive until we reach you. Alessandro's voice was matter-of-fact. You'll have a panic button. Press it. We come running. But Marcus, the whole point is making them think you're vulnerable. You push that button too soon, we lose them. So I wait until they're actually trying to kill me. Basically, yes. Marcus looked at Serafina. She was staring at the maps, her jaw tight, hands clenched into fists. She hadn't wanted this plan, had argued against it for hours. But Luciano was right. Hiding wasn't sustainable. Eventually Marcus would slip. Eventually they'd find an opening. Better to control the battlefield. I can do this, Marcus said, trying to sound confident. Serafina finally looked at him. You better. Because I can't watch you die, Marcus. I can't stand there and watch another person I care about get killed because of who I am. Another person? Her face went still, closed. My mother. Cancer, officially. But it was stress, fear. Living in my father's world destroyed her slowly. I won't let it destroy you the same way. She left the room before Marcus could respond. Luciano sighed. She's terrified. Won't admit it, but she is. Her father's world killed her mother. Now it's trying to kill you. If she loses you because of this plan, she'll never forgive herself. Or me. Then we don't lose, Marcus said simply. Confidence? Good. Luciano clapped him on the shoulder. Get some sleep. Tomorrow you become the most valuable target in Manhattan. Like. The charity function was as boring as Marcus expected. Rich people in expensive clothes pretending they cared about underprivileged children while really networking and showing off jewelry. Marcus played his part perfectly, smiling, shaking hands, pretending he belonged there. But his eyes constantly scanned the room, looking for threats the way Victor had taught him. The museum was beautiful at night. Marble floors, high ceilings, art illuminated by soft lights that made everything look more important than it was. Approximately 200 guests mingled between galleries. Any one of them could be an assassin. In his ear, invisible and flesh-toned, was a communications device. Victor's voice came through occasionally. North Gallery clear. South entrance, 3 suspicious males, checking IDs. Val, stop looking so paranoid. You're supposed to be relaxed. Marcus forced his shoulders to drop, grabbed champagne he wouldn't drink, laughed at a joke from a tech billionaire whose name he had already forgotten, and waited. 2 hours into the event, Victor's voice went sharp. We have movement. 4 men entering through the catering entrance. Not on guest list, not on staff list. This is them. Marcus felt his pulse spike but kept his face neutral. Where? Heading toward you, spreading out. 2 minutes. Marcus moved toward the main gallery where the plan called for him to be. Open space. Lots of exits. Perfect kill zone if you didn't know it was also perfect for a counter ambush. He stood in front of a massive painting, something abstract that probably cost more than a house, and pretended to study it while his heart hammered against his ribs. The first attacker appeared at the north entrance. Tall, dark suit, hands in pockets, but Marcus saw the bulge of a weapon. The man's eyes found Marcus and stayed there. Second attacker, east entrance, shorter, nervous energy, definitely armed. Third, fourth. They were positioning themselves, boxing Marcus in. Victor, Marcus whispered, they're here. We see them. 30 seconds. Stay calm. The first attacker started walking toward Marcus. Slow, casual, like he was just another guest admiring art, but his hand was moving toward his jacket. 20 feet. 15. The man pulled out his weapon, a compact pistol with a suppressor. 10 feet. Marcus's training kicked in. He dove left behind a marble column as the first shot hit the painting where his head had been. The suppressor was good but not perfect. A sharp crack that made nearby guests scream. All 4 attackers opened fire simultaneously. Chaos erupted. Guests running, screaming, the museum's panic alarm blaring. Marcus stayed behind the column, his breath coming in ragged gasps, while bullets chipped away at marble inches from his face. Then Luciano's operators revealed themselves. They came from everywhere, dropping from balconies, emerging from alcoves, rising from behind sculptures. 30 trained killers against 4. The attackers never had a chance. The gunfight lasted maybe 20 seconds. It felt like hours. When the shooting stopped, all 4 attackers were down. 3 dead. 1 wounded and screaming. Guests were huddled in corners, crying, filming on phones that would be confiscated within minutes. Marcus stood up slowly. His ears were ringing. His hands were shaking. But he was alive. Victor appeared beside him. You okay? Yeah, I think so. Good, because now comes the hard part. Victor grabbed Marcus's arm and pulled him toward the wounded attacker. We need to make him talk before he dies. Alessandro was already there, applying pressure to the man's leg wound. Not to save him, to keep him conscious long enough for questioning. Luciano knelt beside the dying man. Who hired you? The man spat blood, said nothing. You're dying. Nothing changes that. But you can die slow or fast, your choice. Luciano's voice was clinical, empty. Who hired you? Go to hell. Alessandro pressed harder on the wound. The man screamed. Last chance, Luciano said. The man's eyes found Marcus, focused there with pure hatred. Vale, you destroyed everything. She destroyed everything. Who? Marcus demanded. Who hired you? Doesn't matter. More will come, Mo. Always more. The man's eyes rolled back. His breathing stopped. Alessandro checked for a pulse, then shook his head. He's gone. Luciano stood, his expression dark. Search the bodies, phones, wallets, anything. Someone sent them, and we need to know who. Victor and other operators moved efficiently, documenting everything. Marcus just stood there, numb, watching them work. He'd survived. Again. But the dying man's words echoed in his head. More will come. Always more. This wasn't over. Wouldn't be over. As long as Serafina had enemies, Marcus would have a target on his back. Serafina appeared from wherever she'd been observing. She'd watched the whole thing happen and hadn't intervened. Had trusted the plan, trusted her people. But her face was white and her hands were shaking. She walked straight to Marcus and grabbed his face, checking for injuries. You're okay. You're okay. I'm fine. The plan worked. The plan almost got you killed. But it didn't. Marcus caught her hands. Serafina, I'm okay. We're okay. She pulled away. We're not okay, Marcus. This is what okay looks like now. Gunfights and death and constant fear. This is what you married into, what you're choosing to stay in. I know. Do you? Do you really understand that this will never stop? That there will always be another threat? Another person trying to kill you to hurt me? Then we deal with them, together. Serafina looked at him for a long moment. Something shifted in her expression. Surprise, maybe, or acceptance, or exhaustion from fighting against the inevitable. You really mean that? Every word. You're insane. Probably, but I'm your kind of insane now. Serafina laughed, short and sharp and slightly unhinged. Then she pulled Marcus into a kiss that was desperate and hungry and tasted like fear and relief mixed together. When they broke apart, Luciano was watching with one eyebrow raised. If you two are finished, we have a problem. Victor found something. Victor held up a phone. Communication device. Encrypted, but we cracked it. The contract on Vale came from inside the Bellori organization. The room went silent. What? Serafina's voice was dangerous. Someone leaked information. Someone told the attackers about tonight. Someone inside our own security structure. Victor's face was grim. We have a traitor. Luciano's expression went from concerned to murderous in half a second. Who? Working on it. But whoever it is, they're still here, still watching, and they know we know. Marcus felt ice flood his veins. They'd just survived one attack, but the real threat was inside their own organization, someone they trusted. Serafina turned to Marcus. We're leaving, now, before whoever it is makes another move. Where? The only place left that's completely secure. Serafina's voice was hard, final. My father's estate in Italy, the one place even traitors can't reach. But no arguments. We go to ground. We root out the traitor, and then we end this permanently. She looked at Luciano. Find them. I don't care what it takes. Find who betrayed us and bring them to me alive. Luciano nodded. Consider it done. They moved toward the exit, surrounded by operators, passing bodies and terrified guests, and evidence of violence that would be cleaned and covered before morning. Marcus looked back once at the museum, at the painting that had been destroyed by bullets meant for him, at the blood on marble floors, at the life he'd thought he wanted before everything changed. That life was dead now, and Marcus was finally ready to step fully into the one waiting for him, no matter how dark it got. The flight to Italy took 9 hours. Marcus sat beside Serafina in the private jet, one of her father's old assets that had been maintained in silence for years, waiting for the daughter who'd sworn she'd never return. The cabin was leather and mahogany and the kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself. But Marcus barely noticed. He kept replaying the museum attack in his head, the gunfire, the screaming, the look in that dying man's eyes when he said more would come. Serafina hadn't spoken since they left Manhattan. She stared out the window at the Atlantic Ocean 30,000 feet below, her face carved from ice, her fingers drumming a nervous pattern on the armrest that Marcus had never seen before. Talk to me, Marcus said quietly. About what? About what you're thinking. About what happens when we land.
Serafina turned to look at him. Her eyes were dark and tired. When we land, we go to my father's estate. It's in the mountains outside Palermo. Stone walls 3 feet thick. Security systems that make military installations look casual. The only people who know about it are the ones my father trusted absolutely. And the traitor? Won't get near us. Can't. Serafina's voice was flat. But that also means we're trapped there until Luciano finds who betrayed us. Could be days. Could be weeks. So we wait. We wait. Serafina looked back out the window. And we figure out if this marriage can survive what we've become.
Marcus felt the weight of those words settle in his chest. They'd survived attacks and kidnappings and violence. But the real question was whether they could survive the quiet, the forced proximity, the inability to hide anymore. I'm scared, Marcus admitted. Serafina's lips twitched, almost a smile. Of what? You just survived a gunfight.
Have you seen who I really am? Not the performance, not the version of me that's trying to be better, just me, flawed and broken and still figuring out how not to be the person I was.
Marcus. Serafina reached over and took his hand. Her fingers were cold. I've known who you really are for 7 years. The question is whether you can accept who I am. The woman who can make people disappear with a phone call, who inherited an empire built on fear, who's capable of things that would horrify the man you used to be. I'm not that man anymore. Maybe, or maybe you're just good at adapting. Serafina squeezed his hand once, then let go. We'll find out soon enough. They landed in Palermo at dawn. The city was golden and ancient beneath them, spreading out from the coast like something from a painting. But they didn't go into the city. A car met them on the tarmac, armored, windowless, driven by a man who spoke only Italian and looked like he'd been carved from the same stone as the Sicilian mountains. They drove for 2 hours, up winding roads, through villages that looked medieval, past olive groves and vineyards and churches that predated America by centuries. The landscape was beautiful and harsh, all sun-baked earth and rock that had witnessed generations of violence and survival. Finally, they arrived at the estate. It sat on a hilltop surrounded by stone walls that looked like they'd been there since Rome fell. The main house was old, not tourist old, but legitimately ancient, with additions built across different centuries that somehow merged into something cohesive. Gardens sprawled behind iron gates. Fountains ran with water that came from mountain springs. It was beautiful in a way that made Marcus understand why people fought wars over places like this.
Home, Serafina said quietly, and Marcus heard something complicated in her voice. Nostalgia, pain, fear, all mixed together. The gates opened. They drove through. The house staff appeared. Older people, maybe 60 or 70, who greeted Serafina in rapid Italian and looked at Marcus with polite curiosity. She introduced him, but Marcus caught maybe 1 word in 3. His high school Spanish was useless here.
They were shown to a bedroom on the 2nd floor. Large windows overlooked the valley below. The bed was enormous and old and looked like it had survived centuries of De Luca family history. Marcus felt like an intruder in a museum. Rest, Serafina said. We'll eat later. Right now you need sleep. What about you? I need to make some calls, check in with Luciano, make sure the traitor hasn't burned down everything while we ran. She paused at the door. Marcus, this room has been in my family for 300 years. My father died in the bed you're standing next to. My mother too, eventually. This place is soaked in De Luca history. If that bothers you, there are other rooms. It doesn't bother me, Marcus said, though it absolutely did. I'm just honored you're trusting me with it. Serafina studied his face for a moment, then nodded and left. Marcus collapsed on the bed and was asleep in seconds. He woke to shouting, Italian shouting, which somehow sounded more aggressive than English shouting. Marcus stumbled out of bed and followed the noise downstairs to a room that looked like an old-world study. Walls of books, a massive desk, maps of Sicily yellowing with age. Serafina stood in the center, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. She was speaking too fast for Marcus to follow, but the tone was unmistakable. Someone had screwed up, and she was making sure they understood exactly how badly. She saw Marcus and switched to English. I don't care about his excuses. I care about results. Find the traitor by tomorrow, or I'm coming back to Manhattan and doing it myself. And Luciano? If anyone else I care about gets hurt because of this leak, you'll be explaining it to my father's ghost. She hung up. Threw the phone on the desk hard enough that Marcus winced. Problem? He asked carefully. They haven't found them yet. Whoever it is, they're good. Covered their tracks. Maybe multiple people working together. Serafina ran her hands through her hair. We had 3 more attempts today. 1 on Arthur's penthouse, 1 on David's car, 1 on your office building. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Anyone hurt? No. But it's escalating. They're not just targeting you anymore. They're going after everyone connected to us. Serafina looked at him. This is what I was afraid of, that protecting you would put everyone else in danger. So what do? We end it. Serafina walked to the desk and pulled out a folder Marcus hadn't noticed. My father kept records. Real ones, not the fakes I gave Kessler. Names of everyone in his network. Everyone who owed him. Everyone he controlled. I've been avoiding using them because once I open this door, I become him. I become the person who uses fear instead of respect. But if you don't, people die. You die. And I can't, her voice cracked. I can't watch that happen. Marcus crossed the room and took the folder from her hands. He opened it. Page after page of names he didn't recognize. Dates, transactions, photographs of people in compromising positions, bank accounts hidden in places Marcus didn't know existed. This was power, raw and absolute and terrifying. If you use this, Marcus said slowly, you can't come back from it. You'll be your father. I know. Is it worth it? Is saving me worth becoming someone you hate? Serafina looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. 7 years ago, I thought I could escape this world by marrying normal, by being small and quiet and forgettable. But normal doesn't exist for people like me. It never did. So the question isn't whether I become my father. The question is whether I become a better version of him. And how do you do that? By using his tools for something other than power, by protecting instead of controlling, by building instead of destroying. Serafina took the folder back. But it starts with survival, and survival means making calls I swore I'd never make. She picked up her phone and dialed a number from memory. Spoke in Italian, listened, spoke again, her voice cold and commanding. She made 3 more calls, then 4, then 7, each one shorter than the last, each one ending with what sounded like orders that wouldn't be questioned. When she finished, she set down the phone and looked at Marcus. It's done. By tomorrow, every person who might know about the traitor will be questioned. Not nicely. By the end of the week, we'll have answers. And then? Then I deal with them. Permanently. Serafina's voice was flat. No police. No courts. Just removal. That's how my father's world works. Marcus felt something cold in his chest. Not fear exactly. More like recognition. This was the woman he'd married. Not the quiet decoration. Not the hidden power. But this. Someone capable of ordering death like other people ordered dinner. I'm not horrified, Marcus said quietly. Serafina blinked. What? I know I should be. The old Marcus would have been. But I'm not. You're protecting people you love, using the only tools you have. I'm not going to judge you for that. You're not scared of me? Terrified. But not because of what you can do. Marcus moved closer. Because I'm afraid you'll look at me one day and realize I'm still not worth all this effort. Serafina laughed. It was short and sharp and had no humor in it. Marcus, you idiot, I've spent 7 years married to you. I know exactly what you're worth. And I'm still here. Why? Because somewhere under all the ego and mistakes, you're a good man. You just forgot for a while. She reached up and touched his face. And because watching you almost die twice made me realize I'm not ready to lose you, even if you drive me insane, even if protecting you costs me everything. Marcus kissed her. Not desperate like at the museum, just honest, real. 2 broken people trying to figure out if broken pieces could fit together. When they broke apart, Serafina smiled. A real smile. The first Marcus had seen in months. Come on, she said. Let me show you the rest of the estate. If we're hiding here until this is over, you should at least know where everything is. Pumped. The estate was massive. Serafina led Marcus through rooms filled with family history, portraits of dead DeLucas glaring down from walls, furniture that had survived wars, a library that smelled like old paper and secrets. She told him stories as they walked. Her grandfather who'd built half the property with his own hands, her great-aunt who'd hidden refugees during World War II, her father who'd transformed a respectable family into something far more dangerous. He wasn't always like that, Serafina said as they stood in what had been Vittorio's personal study. When I was young, he was kind, funny. He taught me to read in this room. We'd sit by that window and he'd tell me stories about Sicily before it was complicated by power and money. What changed him? My mother got sick, cancer. He spent millions trying to save her, called in every favor, used every connection, but money can't buy miracles. Serafina touched the desk where her father had worked. When she died, something broke in him. He stopped caring about being good and started caring about being powerful. Because powerful people don't lose, they take. And he'd already lost the only thing that mattered. Is that why you left? Partially, but mostly I left because I could see myself becoming him. Using people, treating relationships like transactions. I was 23 and already more feared than loved. Serafina looked at Marcus. So I ran to America, changed my name, became nobody, and I was happy being nobody until I met you. What made me different?
You didn't know who I was, didn't want anything from me except company. You were ambitious and flawed and sometimes insufferable, but you were real. She smiled sadly. Or at least I thought you were. Turned out you were performing too. We were both pretending to be people we weren't. We're not pretending anymore. No, we're not. Serafina walked to the window. The sun was setting over the valley, painting everything gold and red. Marcus, if we survive this, if we root out the traitor and end the attacks, what happens then? Do we go back to Manhattan and pretend we're normal? Do we stay here and embrace this world? What do you want? Marcus thought about it, really thought. About the penthouse in Tribeca with its empty rooms and expensive views. About Vale Dominion and the company he'd built from ego and ambition. About the life he'd thought he wanted before everything shattered. I want to build something real, Marcus said finally. I want to use Vale Dominion to actually help people instead of just making money. I want to wake up next to you and not wonder if today's the day you finally leave. I want to earn the protection you've given me by becoming someone who deserves it. That's a lot of wants. I know. Probably more than I deserve. Marcus turned to face her. But Serafina, I've spent 7 years chasing the wrong things. Power, status, validation from people who don't matter. And it all turned to ashes the moment I almost lost you. So yeah, I want a lot. But mostly I just want you. However that looks. Serafina was quiet for a long time. Then she crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him, pressing her face against his chest. I'm tired, she said quietly. I'm so tired of fighting, of being strong, of making impossible choices. Can we just stay here, just for tonight? Pretend the world doesn't exist outside these walls? Yeah, Marcus said, holding her tight. We can do that. They stayed like that as the sun set completely and the room fell into darkness. Two people holding each other against the weight of everything trying to tear them apart. The call came 3 days later. Marcus was in the garden learning Italian from one of the older staff members when Serafina appeared in the doorway. Her face was tight. Her phone was in her hand. They found him, she said. The traitor? Yes. And Marcus, you need to hear this. They went back to the study. Serafina put the phone on speaker. Luciano's voice came through, tired and grim. His name is Robert Klein, chairman of your board, Marcus. He's been feeding information to 3 different organizations for the past 2 years. Marcus felt the floor drop out from under him. Robert? That's impossible. He's been with me since the beginning, which is why he was perfect. No one suspected him. No one questioned his access. Luciano's voice was flat. We found encrypted communications, bank transfers. He was paid over $5 million to provide information about Vale Dominion's operations, about Marcus's schedule, about Serafina's movements after she revealed herself. Why? Marcus's voice cracked. Why would he do this? Debt. His son has a gambling problem. Robert covered it for years, but eventually the debt got too large.
So he started selling information. Small things at first, then bigger, then everything. Serafina's face was murderous. Where is he now? Secured, waiting for your orders. Bring him to Sicily. I want to hear his excuses in person. Serafina, Luciano's voice held warning. If you do this here on your father's estate, there's symbolism. People will talk. They'll say Vittorio's daughter is taking his throne. Let them talk. Bring him. Luciano was quiet for a moment, then, understood. We'll arrive tomorrow night. The line went dead. Marcus sat down heavily. Robert Klein, the man who'd been his mentor when Marcus first started Vale Dominion, who'd guided him through his first acquisition, who'd stood at Marcus's wedding and told him he was proud. That man had betrayed them, had sold them out, had gotten people killed for money. I'm sorry, Serafina said quietly. For what? For you having to learn that loyalty means nothing when people are desperate enough. She sat beside him. My father taught me that. People aren't good or bad. They're just people. And people do terrible things when they're afraid. What are you going to do to him? What needs to be done? Which is? Serafina looked at him directly. Marcus, don't ask questions you don't want answered. I need to know. If I'm staying in this world, I need to understand what that means. It means sometimes people die. Not in gunfights. Not dramatically. Just quietly. Permanently. And the world moves on like they never existed. Serafina's voice was cold. Empty. Robert Klein put a price on your head. Got innocent people attacked. Betrayed every trust we gave him. In my father's world, there's only one response to that. Execution. Justice. The kind that happens outside courtrooms and police stations. She stood. If you can't accept that, Marcus, tell me now. Because once this happens, there's no taking it back. No pretending we're civilized people playing by civilized rules. Marcus thought about Robert, about the gunfight at the museum, about Alessandro taking a bullet, about Serafina giving up her father's legacy to save Marcus's life, about all the people who'd been hurt because one man decided money was worth more than loyalty. Do what needs to be done, Marcus said quietly. I trust you. Serafina studied his face, looking for doubt, for judgment, for the old Marcus who would have recoiled in horror. She found none of it. Okay, she said. Then tomorrow we end this. Bishesink. Robert Klein arrived at sunset. They brought him in restraints through the estate's back entrance. He looked terrible, gray and shaking, his expensive suit rumpled, his eyes wide with fear. When he saw Serafina waiting in her father's study, he actually started crying. Please, Robert said. Serafina, please, I can explain. Sit. Her voice was ice. Robert sat in the chair they positioned in the center of the room. Marcus stood by the window, watching. Luciano was there too, along with Victor and Alessandro. Witnesses. Or executioners. Marcus wasn't sure which. Robert Klein, Serafina began, her voice formal. Clinical. You stand accused of betraying the trust of this family, of selling information that led directly to attacks on Marcus Vale, of compromising security operations that resulted in casualties. How do you plead? I didn't have a choice, Robert's voice broke. My son, he owed money to people who don't forgive debts. They threatened to kill him, to kill my whole family. I had to... You had choices. You could have come to me, asked for help. My father built his empire on helping people escape exactly these situations. Serafina's voice was hard. Instead, you chose to sell out people who trusted you, who gave you power and authority and respect. You chose money over loyalty. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. Antun. Sorry doesn't resurrect the dead, Robert. It doesn't heal Alessandro's bullet wound. It doesn't give Marcus back the months of fear and trauma. Serafina walked closer. You gambled with other people's lives to save your own family. I understand the impulse, but understanding doesn't mean forgiveness. Robert looked at Marcus, desperate. Marcus, please. We've known each other for years. I helped you build Vale Dominion. That has to count for something. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. You're right. It does count, which is why this hurts. But Robert, you didn't just betray the company.
You betrayed me. You put my wife in danger. You got people hurt. And I can't forgive that. I won't. Robert's face crumpled. So that's it? You're just going to kill me? No trial? No chance to make this right? There's no making this right, Serafina said flatly. But I'm not a monster, Robert. I'm giving you a choice. She placed 2 items on the desk, a gun and a thick envelope. Option 1, you take the gun. You go to the garden. You end this yourself, quick, painless. Your family gets the life insurance. Your name stays mostly clean. Serafina's voice was empty of emotion. Option 2, you take the envelope. It contains 50,000 euros, a new passport, and coordinates for a safe house in Argentina. You disappear. Completely. Forever. Your family thinks you're dead. You never contact them. Never return to America. Never use your real name again. You live, but you lose everything that made you Robert Klein. Robert stared at the items. That's not a choice. That's cruelty. That's mercy. My father would have killed your family too. Sent a message that betrayal has consequences beyond the traitor. Serafina's eyes were cold. I'm letting them live. But you pay the price. And if I refuse both, then we do this the hard way. And trust me, Robert, you don't want the hard way. The room fell silent. Robert looked at the gun, at the envelope, at Marcus, at Luciano, looking for sympathy he wouldn't find. Finally, his hand reached out. He took the envelope. I want to see my family one more time, he said, his voice breaking. Please, just let me say goodbye. No, that's not one of the options. Serafina's voice was final. You made your choice. Now you live with it. Victor, take him to the car. Get him to the airfield. Make sure he gets on the plane. Victor grabbed Robert's arm and pulled him up. Robert looked back at Marcus one last time. I'm sorry, he said, for everything. I hope someday you understand. I already do, Marcus said quietly. That's why I can't forgive you. Victor led Robert out. The door closed. Silence settled over the study like a shroud. Is he actually going to Argentina? Marcus asked. Serafina poured herself wine with hands that shook slightly. No. He'll be dead before the plane takes off. Quick shot to the head. Painless. Victor is good at this. Then why the choice? Because I needed to know if he valued life or comfort more. Gun meant he chose to protect his family's future. Envelope meant he chose to save himself. Serafina drank deeply. He chose wrong, but at least now I know the kind of man he really was. Marcus felt sick, not because Robert was about to die, but because he understood the logic, understood why it had to happen this way, understood that this was justice in a world that operated outside laws he used to believe in. How do you live with this? Marcus asked. The killing, the hard choices, the weight of all this power. The same way my father did. The same way anyone does. Serafina looked at him. You accept that some people don't deserve second chances, that mercy has limits, that protecting the people you love sometimes means destroying the ones who threaten them. You live with it because the alternative is watching everyone you care about die while you cling to morality. And you're okay with that? No, I hate it, but I'm done pretending there's another way. Serafina set down her wine glass. Marcus, this is who I am, who I have to be. If you can't accept that, if you need me to be someone softer, I don't need you to be anything except honest. Marcus crossed the room and took her hands. They were cold despite the warm Sicilian evening. I love you, the real you, the woman who makes impossible choices and carries the weight so other people don't have to, the woman who's terrifying and brilliant and still trying to be good despite operating in a world that punishes goodness. Serafina's eyes filled with tears. I don't feel good, Marcus. I feel like I'm becoming my father. You're not. Your father would have killed Robert's family too, would have made it public, would have used it to send a message about power. Marcus pulled her closer. You gave him mercy. Not much, but enough. That's the difference. It doesn't feel like enough. It never will. But it's more than most people would give. They stood like that for a long time. Serafina crying silently against his chest. Marcus holding her while she finally let herself be vulnerable.
let herself be human instead of the ice queen everyone expected. Outside, a car started, drove away, taking Robert Klein toward his final destination. Luciano appeared in the doorway. "It's done. He won't suffer." "Thank you," Serafina said without turning around. "What now?" Luciano asked. "Now we go home. Back to Manhattan. Back to pretending we're civilized." Serafina pulled away from Marcus and wiped her eyes. "Is it safe?" "As safe as it ever will be. With Klein gone, the leak is closed. We've reinforced security, sent messages to everyone who might think about testing you." Luciano's voice was careful. "But Serafina, you used your father's network, made calls he would have made. People noticed. They're waiting to see what you do next. Let them wait." Serafina's voice was hard again. "I did what I had to do. That doesn't mean I'm taking his throne. They'll assume you are anyway. Then I'll correct that assumption." She looked at Luciano directly. "My father's empire dies with him. I'm not rebuilding it. I'm not becoming him. I protected my family using his tools, but that's where it ends. And if they don't accept that, they'll learn to." Serafina smiled without warmth. "Or they'll find out exactly how much of Vittorio De Luca's daughter I can be when pushed." Luciano nodded slowly. "I'll make sure the right people understand, but Serafina, you should know, your father would be proud. Not of the killing, but of your strength, your willingness to do what needed to be done. My father's pride doesn't matter anymore. He's dead." Serafina's voice was tired. "I'm doing this for the people who are still alive. That's all that matters now." They left Sicily 3 days later. Marcus stood at his wife's parents' graves on the final morning, watching Serafina lay flowers on the stone markers. She spoke in Italian, words Marcus couldn't understand but didn't need to. Apologies, maybe. Promises. Confessions about the woman she'd become. When she finished, she turned to Marcus. "Ready?" "Yeah, let's go home." The flight back was quieter than the trip over. They'd survived. Ended the immediate threats. Closed the leaks. But the cost was written in the new lines around Serafina's eyes, in the way she held herself, in the knowledge that she'd crossed lines she'd sworn she never would. Manhattan looked different when they landed, still glittering, still loud, still indifferent. But Marcus saw it now the way Serafina must always have, as a stage where dangerous people played civilized roles while real power moved in shadows beneath the surface. They went home to the penthouse. It was exactly as they'd left it. But everything felt different. "I'm sleeping in our bedroom tonight," Serafina said as she set down her bag. Not asking, stating, "If that's okay with you, it's more than okay." They spent the evening unpacking, ordering takeout, doing normal things that felt revolutionary after weeks of violence and running. When they finally got into bed, together for the first time in months, Marcus felt something settle in his chest that had been restless since the night of the gala. "I'm sorry," Serafina said in the darkness. "For what?" "For dragging you into my world. For the danger. For making you become someone harder than you wanted to be." "You didn't make me become anything." Marcus turned to face her. "I chose this. Chose you. Chose to stop hiding behind ego and start actually living. Yeah, it's been terrifying, but it's also been real. And I'll take real over comfortable every single time. Even if real means watching people die, even then. Because the alternative is going back to being the man who brought another woman to a gala while his wife sat home alone. And I'd rather die than be that person again." Serafina kissed him, soft and slow and full of something that felt like hope. "I love you," she said. "I should have said it months ago, years ago, but I was afraid it would make you think you'd won, like our marriage was some game you'd conquered. Did you think that?" "Sometimes, but not anymore." She rested her head on his chest. "Now I think we both lost the games we were playing and found something real in the wreckage. That's almost poetic. Don't get used to it. I'm still capable of being terrifying when necessary. I know, that's one of the things I love about you." They fell asleep like that. Two broken people who'd finally stopped pretending they weren't. 6 months later, Marcus stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office and looked out at Manhattan. Vile Dominion had changed. Under his and Serafina's joint leadership, She'd finally accepted a position on the board after months of Marcus begging. The company had shifted from aggressive expansion to sustainable growth. Profit margins were lower, but employee satisfaction was higher. Partnerships were healthier. The company wasn't the biggest anymore, but it was solid, real, built on foundations that wouldn't collapse the moment someone looked too closely. His phone buzzed. Text from Serafina. Meeting with Luciano in 20, dinner after? Marcus smiled and typed back. Absolutely. That new Italian place you hate? The one with terrible carbonara? Perfect. See you at 7. Marcus pocketed his phone and turned back to his desk. There was work to do, contracts to review, decisions to make. But now those decisions came from a place of wanting to build instead of wanting to dominate. It made everything slower, harder, but infinitely more satisfying. David Chen knocked on the door. Got a minute? Always? What's up? David entered and closed the door. I wanted to tell you something, off the record. Okay. A year ago, I thought you were going to destroy this company. Your ego, your impulsiveness, your need to always be the smartest person in the room. David smiled. I was wrong. The man sitting at this desk now is someone I'm proud to work for.